Relocation Commission. The Commission's here tonight to work together with all of you, property owners, neighbors, and architects, to continue the tradition that was established nearly 40 years ago in this community. That tradition is a review process that allows community members to work together to preserve the qualities and unique character that make Lake Forest a special community. The City of Lake Forest is committed to conducting open and democratic meetings. To achieve that goal, meeting procedures have been adopted by the Commission. A copy of the procedures is available at the back room on each agenda. As always, it's the intent of the Commission to help manage the development and growth of the City of Lake Forest with a keen sense of preserving the historic structures and open space in the city for all its present and future residents. Our goal is to move each petition before us tonight through the review process as quickly as possible, while balancing the interests of the petitioners, neighboring property owners, and the larger community. And we'll start long day, Mondays, with the introduction of the commissioners.
Susan Atkinson.
Mary Ellen Swenson.
Guy Berg.
Kirk Peretz.
Fred Moyer.
Bill Ransom.
Jim Preschlag.
And I have on this agenda approval of meeting minutes. Did we get meeting minutes? I don't think we did. Yeah, so we'll table that till next week or next month. So our first petition is a request for Certificate of Appropriateness approving construction of a new single-family dwelling, restoration of existing carriage house and pump house to allow adaptive reuse in conjunction with the new residence, relocation and incorporation of the Gardner's Cottage and the new house proposed at 580 Broadsmore Drive. This is something that we've seen a couple of times. I don't believe that there's any ex parte conflicts, so when you're ready. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. I'm Scott Streightiff, and I'll be presenting this continued petition tonight on behalf of the owners, Dr. and Mrs. Riacca. At the October 26th HBC meeting, this petition was continued primarily due to an uncertainty as to the optimal reuse of the existing outbuildings on the property. These are the carriage house, the Gardner's Cottage, and the pump house, all of which were part of the James Ward Thorne estate located across the street at 525 Broadsmore. While the commissioners were generally in favor of the design of the new project, and some of you supported the project as presented, others encouraged us to meet with a subcommittee in an effort to explore ways of saving all three of these structures on the property before making a motion to vote. As a result of this meeting, after exploring various options with the elected subcommittee and discussing in detail some of the programmatic and zoning issues surrounding the various options, both the property owner and the subcommittee have agreed and decided to pursue the following option with respect to these outbuildings. So what you see here, I believe this is option number 7, which shows the configuration of the outbuildings as they exist currently. And what we are proposing is, number 1, restoration of the existing pump house in its existing location. Number 2, restoration of the existing carriage house in its existing location, and removal of the later addition off the back. And number 3, relocation of the Gardner's Cottage so that it sits within the property setback lines and is adaptively reused as the north wing of the proposed new residence. So the result is a configuration of outbuildings like this, which is similar to the current orientation. This is the front elevation of the proposed north wing, showing how the cottage would be incorporated, which is highlighted here in the shaded area. The front elevation remains relatively unchanged with the exception of the porte cochere. We are proposing a one-car, single-story extension to the east and a diminutive connection to the main house on the west. This is the proposed north elevation, which faces the rear of the property, and the cottage is highlighted here in the shaded region. This elevation shows the changes that we were proposing for the adaptive reuse. These are the simple garage doors along the first floor, which will replace a lot of the fenestration that has been altered over the years. And we are proposing 2 additional dormers on the second floor that will match the original existing dormer in the center. This is a photograph of the model which shows the pieces of the north wing separated, highlighting the cottage in the center And this is a photo which shows how the cottage would be engaged with the proposed residence. And then this is the same for the rear or north side, showing the cottage structure separated, and then how it would be engaged. So we're really excited about this project. The result will be a preservation of all three structures. It's a functional solution for the property owner. It conforms to all zoning, bulk, and building scale ordinances, so no variances will be required, and will be a unique property with an intriguing story that respects our past and embraces our future. Again, this is a property that deserves and is in need of an investment in restoration. This is a unique property with challenging circumstances. With the help of the subcommittee, we think that we've identified a solution that both works for the property owner and supports the mission of this board. So thank you for taking the time to consider the complexities of this project, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Megan, do we have a follow-up staff report?
Thank you, Chairman Peretz. I won't go into too much detail on the proposed project. The Commission has seen this petition on a number of occasions, but this is really an example of a petition where the flexibility and willingness of the owner and the project architect to work with the Commission, to work with city staff, has achieved an end result that meets the needs of the owners as well as meeting the standards in the preservation ordinance. I find that this is a creative solution to the problem of how to develop this lot with a single-family home and preserve the character of the site with the historic outbuildings. Consistent with previous discussions going back to 2006 regarding this property, this project preserves and restores two of the historic outbuildings. The outbuildings, are associated with the Thorne Estate located across the street. Based on input from the Commission at the October meeting, the current petition reuses and adaptively reuses the Gardner's cottage as part of the north wing, as was explained by the project architect. Staff is supportive of this project as currently presented, and really thanks the petitioner for their patience and their hard work on this petition. The recommended conditions of approval, I'll just speak to a couple of them that are indicated in your staff report. They speak to the need to carefully review the revised siting of the proposed main residence. As a result of reusing the Gardner's cottage, some things have shifted slightly to the east, and we really want to verify that the significant trees will be preserved and that the landscape plan will meet the standards in the ordinance. In particular, the inch-for-inch replacement of any trees removed for this project will really allow for a large or a high tree canopy to be reestablished in the future. As was discussed in previous meetings, there is a significant grade change on the property. We will require an engineered drainage and grading plan to be reviewed as this goes through the permit process, if supported by the Commission this evening. And finally, staff will continue to work with the petitioner as the drawings are refined and presented as part of a permit application. And we are recommending that either the chairman of the commission or the subcommittee be involved in that final review of the permit drawings to make sure that the discussion that occurs this evening is shown in those drawings appropriately. So I would be happy to answer any questions. We are recommending approval as noted in the staff report with the conditions of approval.
Do we have any questions for the staff or the petitioner? Megan, I have one question for you. With respect to the timing of the restoration of the outbuildings relative to the construction of the new building, is there a requirement for them to be tied together somehow in order to get a certificate of occupancy, for example, with the home? Would the other two outbuildings need to be completed? And of course, what I'm concerned with is that the timing for the restoration of the other two buildings is completed expediently if the home is built.
Sure. We can certainly work with the Commission to draft another condition of approval that speaks to that. But with respect to the site plan and the project plan, we will approve the whole thing as a single permit, and yes, that would be tied to the final occupancy for the new house.
Oh, it would be. Okay. So that, if I understand that, then there's no requirement for another condition if it's tied to the final occupancy of the building.
You could include a condition of approval and let me know, Kathy, if this is inappropriate, but that the whole project be brought forward at one time together so that they are tied together.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for the petitioner or the staff?
I just had a question for the subcommittee. In your work, can you just give us what did you have any findings, or what was your conclusion? Did you think this was the best solution to what we talked about at last meeting?
I'll jump in, I guess. Commissioner Preschlack and I were the subcommittee. We met on site. Kathy joined us, and the architect, and both Dr. and Mrs. Riacca. We toured the Gardner's cottage, upstairs, downstairs, basement, and got a better feeling about what it was about. Walked the site together, and then the model was in the kitchen of the Gardner's cottage, so we had all, and drawings, so we had all the materials available. I think the consensus was this was the best solution. We came to that, all of us. I think the architect may have felt this was the best solution earlier than we did. I don't know, but we all arrived to the same end point. And it retains and adaptively reuses the Gardner's cottage. I will say that at earlier meetings, I was hopeful that it could be retained in its present state without being adaptively or changed into a garage from its backside. But that was still not an option I would rule out, or did rule out at the time. I just thought it might be preferable if it could be retained and perhaps even in its present location. But I think all the study that was done by the architect demonstrated very well that that was just out of reach, those two conditions, and that this is overall, I think, the best option.
Yeah, I think Fred put it nicely. I think it was a great balance of the property rights of the owners, and also the historical nature of the sites and the outbuildings. And I think Scott did a great job. Just really cares about the project, and so do the petitioners. And we spent probably half an hour to 45 minutes just talking through the site and various options, and this one coalesced pretty nicely. And I was always receptive, even at the first meeting, to an adaptive reuse of the cottage, and I think this made just a nice, attractive site and plan. So I was happy with the outcome.
Any other questions?
I just had a quick question for Scott along that same line. So when you were going through the options, and you were looking at adaptive reuse of the cottage, why didn't you see that viable as living space, and why did you think garage was the best use of it?
I think what we talked about in the meeting is that to use the cottage as living space and then create an additional small building, you're kind of left with 4 sort of smaller buildings on the property. And so, in order to do that, we would have to convince the property owner to somehow live in the cottage as living space, and have an extension of that as additional living space in a smaller house, and then beyond that, come up with a way to have an additional garage and service area for the house in a different area. So that was one thing. The other thing is really the approach to the house. I mean, to me, it's very important to arrive at the house, have a sense of arrival, and then proceed on to the garages. So if we use the carriage house in its existing location, and then design another conforming structure within the property lines, you're sort of left with the opposite side of the house for the service area and the garage, which then creates a whole new approach to the house from the opposite area. And I kind of felt it was important to maintain that curb cut down at the street and arrive at the front of the house, and then proceed on to the service area. And so that kind of, all those things kind of push and pull.
Thank you.
But I think, I guess the other comment I'd make is that there is living space upstairs. So it's a partial living kind of reuse, and I actually like that, and it's going to connect it into the newer part of the building. And I felt that it would be a nice story to look at the old and the new together, to speak to the future of the site and the neighborhood, especially with the 2 preserved outbuildings in their original state. So I thought it was a good job, and, you know.
Okay, any other questions for?
I just have a couple, Scott. There's nothing changed from our October meeting regarding the carriage house and the pump house. That's exactly the same. And as far as the Gardner's Cottage, could you speak to me as to what would remain from the original structure and what's going to be either replaced because of the relocation of the cottage?
Yes, we're gonna do the best that we can to move the cottage intact. I will say there's a lot of structural and mechanical correction that needs to take place to this wing in order for it to be current. So, you know, and it has to be level and square and all of those things. And if there's, you know, things that are rotted will be replaced. And so, I think whatever it takes to bring everything up to date, we'll do. I can't, I guess, tell you exactly.
Do you have an idea? Certainly, all those things are given. I'm just wondering, trying to get a feel for, you know, if we're saving 5% of the cottage or 95% of the cottage by moving it. You know.
Yeah, no, I mean the main structure is going to remain. So a lot of the cosmetic stuff will likely be replaced. You know, a lot of the exterior stucco, if it's failing or falling off the lath, will be replaced. That said, we're not going to go in the first day and gut the whole thing and rip it all apart. So
structurally, you think it's sound enough to move and
I do
without problem. Okay, thanks.
Other questions or comments?
Well, I'll comment.
Okay, let's see if there's any public testimony on this issue. Does anyone from the public have? Please come on up, identify yourself. And
I'm Paul Friedland. I'm a neighbor.
could you come up and, I'm sorry, could you come up? There's folks on camera or at home, so if you could just tell us who you are, where you live, and talk to the microphone, that'd be great. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, my name is Paul Friedland. I live at 740 Broadsmore. What should I look into or speak?
I don't know.
We have multiple cameras.
Where's the camera? You can talk to us. It's okay.
You're the architect? Yes. I have not met the client. He'll be the neighbor of ours, obviously, at some point, he and she. I just want to say, this property, as it is now, is an eyesore. It's an embarrassment to the community. And I think that in most communities, this would not even be allowed to do this. But, so what I would say is, I think you've done a great job on this. I want to say also, I want to thank your client for what he's doing, for what he's do to improve the neighborhood, and especially given all the harassment that's in this process. So again, I thank him, I look forward to meeting him, and look forward to seeing stuff. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Please come on up and identify yourself. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Susan Benjamin. I just want to commend you and commend the owner. As a preservationist, it's awfully gratifying to see a win-win situation where you get together and you talk and you reach a compromise. And this is a great one. You preserved 2 buildings and adaptively reused the third and revitalized a piece of property that needed that. So I just want to commend you and commend them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public testimony on this subject? All right, I see none, so now's the time for deliberations. I know we have some deliberations. Guy, you want to jump in?
I just wanted to say that, gosh, you guys had a great subcommittee, because it seems like it's gone over everything and come up with something that really is attractive. What's really kind of a wonderful coincidence of this is that because now that the Gardner's Cottage is up in the ranks of the other appendage, and the initial design was so nicely taken from the Gardner's Cottage that the change out is it's really great. I mean, and it makes a lot of sense with what you've designed the house as. You sure you didn't have this in mind the whole time, Scott? It's just so wonderfully deft the way it works together. So I'm happy, and you know, actually, the idea of the vehicle, you know, presence on the first floor, of course, isn't a residential presence. But, you know, this was a Gardner's cottage, and in a sense of the abstract, it was a subordinate structure to a larger estate. So if this was, say, a primary residence and we were turning it into a garage, it would, you know, it would be a little harder to bite that bullet. So, you know, I think that this is kind of a nice fit, you know, ideologically as well. So I think it worked out quite nicely. And it gets that building away from the property line if the neighbors have any issues. I know one of the neighbors further down the way there was concerned about water and runoff, so I'm not sure that that's important, but nice job, everybody.
All right, I'm inclined to call the question unless anybody's got much greater deliberations. Oh, sure, Megan, would you like to speak?
Just before you guys go to a motion, I wanted to offer a draft condition of approval to speak to one of your questions earlier. That prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy, in addition to the new residence, all of the outbuildings shall be restored consistent with the approved plan and certificate of appropriateness approved by the commission.
And I guess I'll ask if, Scott, you think that's a fair condition? Yeah, okay, just checking. Want to get the nod from your, okay, good. Anybody else?
Well, you know, I just want to make one comment about
Sure,
this because
please.
I think we spent so much time on this, and I know, you know, some people didn't like what we were saying or thinking we were being too picky, but look at the outcome. And like Susan Benjamin just said, and you know, I really, at first I was not thrilled that we weren't using this as a cottage, and I was thinking, no, this is not what we should do with the landmark building, but I really respect the effort that the subcommittee put into this. I really respect the work that Scott's done. I mean, he's designed a beautiful building that's going to fit well in with the neighborhood, while, you know, everyone just really took a second look at this. And I think sometimes when we take really long on projects, we get criticized for it, but the compromise is really shown through here that we can have a win-win situation. So it does work when we do some extra effort into it. So.
Any other comments?
Yeah, and I would just kind of echo that, and just really, I would thank the Riaccas a lot about their patience and going through this. I mean, there were 2 committees that worked with this property through the subdivision, and then there were some members that were a part of that, and there were new members like myself a part of it. And you know, I think we were erring on the cautious side on this one with the ordinance and the landmark status. And I think just, Susan, that's a great point. That, you know, we ended up with a nice result, and I do want to just thank them for the effort and their hard work and their caring for the neighborhood and the property, and I guess tolerating the process as well.
Anybody else? No. All right, anyone want to make a motion? Mr. Subcommittee?
Yeah. So I move to approve the petition as submitted based on the findings and subject to the 3 staff criteria for the tree plan and the grading plan, and then the syncing up of the construction of the outbuildings and occupancy of the main residence.
Including the added petition.
Yeah, the added petition.
Motion's been made by Commissioner Preschlack. Do I have a
Can I
second?
just have a clarification
Sure,
on the motion? There's a number of different conditions that are in the staff report prior to the issue of the building permit and other conditions. Does the motion include all those?
I believe it does include all of those,
Okay.
including Megan's added.
Including Megan's, okay.
Mhm.
Just
Yeah.
wanted to make
Is that
sure that
clear?
was clear.
All right, so that motion's been made. Seconded by Commissioner Moyer. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So that passes. Congratulations. Thank you. All right. Our next request is for a request for a certificate of appropriateness approving partial demolition, replacement, addition, and alterations at 440 East Illinois Road. I'll ask if there's any ex parte conflicts. I think we've seen this once before, so it looks like we're good to go.
Is there a subcommittee on this? We did it.
No bullying, no bullying, no bullying.
We did. No. Okay.
Are you okay? You're up.
Yes, it was. Curvin.
That looks much better. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, sure. Go ahead. Thanks.
Well, good evening. I'm J.R. Locey, and I'm the purchaser of 440 East Illinois. And we're back from our last presentation. And since that meeting, we did have the privilege of working both very closely with Kathy from the city as well as the subcommittee. And I have to tell you that really that had a profound effect on what we're presenting tonight, and we're pretty confident that you'll see that. I hope that what you'll notice is we did take into consideration some of the suggestions that were made the last time we were here, actually all of them to be exact. And one of the things relative to the profound effect on our design is that the subcommittee really pointed out to us how to design a home that would be historically relevant, but also taking into consideration the neighbors and how to minimize the impact to not just the immediate neighbors, but also the neighborhood. And one of the things that came out of that was really recognizing the historical relevance of the original structure, which was a traditional 4-square home. And in doing the reworking through this process and the number of reconsiderations that were taken through this planning process, we really tried to focus on the immediate structure, the front portion, looking more like the mass of the structure being in line with a 4-square home, and really making the addition feel like the subordinate addition. In doing so, we looked at the exterior of the home and took that into consideration well before we started considering the interior. And that did have an impact on some of the considerations that had to be made and some of the concessions that we lost through that process. But do believe that through the recommendations of the subcommittee, we did net out with a much more aesthetically appealing result. And some of the things that were really emphasized were when we looked at the south side of the home, we struggled with the fact that the existing home, our neighbor to the south, is built about 2.5 feet off the property line, and it made it difficult to recognize how do you make something that's appealing when their perspective or view of our home is going to be very narrow. However, we wanted to be respectful of minimizing the disruption that it had on their quality of life. So some of the considerations that were taken into place was that we pushed the home two feet in so that the home would not be in the easement. We even pushed it back far enough that the eaves would not be in the easement. In addition, we moved the chimney to the actually the east end of the house as opposed to the south side, so that didn't encroach on their home as well. The other thing that we did is a recommendation by the subcommittee, which I hope will have a significant impact on the perception of the building scale, is we lowered the roof line by about 2 feet, 2.5 feet, I believe, from the original structure in the front, which that roof line will remain consistent. Looking to the north, that north neighbor is a little bit further away, and so we wanted to have a significant improvement on what we were presenting from that angle. And because it's further away, they're going to have a broader perspective of that home. And the way that the yard actually slopes, the driveway goes down and allows for us to convert an existing garage into a basement area. That, however, also gave that neighbor the appearance that it was a 3-story home in scale. So we worked very diligently to try to minimize that impact to that neighbor. Such things as taking the retaining wall down to the far north side to minimize the scale. We added a balcony on that north side, which is a strong suggestion by the committee, which really breaks up that viewpoint. And we also used multiple building materials. So it's not just the siding that was originally there, but we also used the cedar shingles to kind of break up that side perspective. So in summary, and Neal's going to do such a better job of walking you through this, but my point that I wanted to make was we heard and learned from the experience. We're new to Lake Forest, and so this has been a learning process for us. But what we hope that you'll see tonight is we did take into consideration all the advice that we got at our last meeting, the recommendations that we got from the city, the recommendations and suggestions that we received from the committee, and in result, we're presenting a project tonight that is well within the bulk. It's significantly smaller than the last home recommendation that we had, as well as the fact that we're not asking for any zoning variances. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our architect to walk you through it.
Thank you, Jared. Again, my name is Neal Gerdes. I'm with AKL Architectural Services. And as Jared mentioned, I'll go through a lot of the stuff we just said, so you'll see a little bit clearer in pictures and in drawings what Jared was talking about. This is the existing home right, that you see from the front, from the street view. And although it is a 4-square home in plan and somewhat in view, it really doesn't have some of the characteristics that a 4-square home would have, such as the alignment of the windows on the first and second floor, typically a porch that goes all the way across. Some of the other issues as well, just some of the detailing just isn't relevant for that period. We'll go on to the next slide. Same view from a different angle. This is really the straight view from the street. You can see there are some trees that block some of the view of the house, but really it is a fairly small house from the front of the view of the street, and we're really not going to be changing a lot of that initial view. This shows a little bit of the detailing that's on the porch. This railing we feel is added at a later date. It doesn't seem to have the same style, more of an 80s or 70s addition. But this kind of detailing is nice to have the rosettes up there, some of the rafter type ends that are sticking out. That's a really nice detail that we're going to have and continue to have on some of the other issues of or areas of the home, such as the portico that we're going to add. Existing bay on the north side, again, very nice. We're going to leave this as is, intact, keeping the detail that it has right now. And these photos are going to take us a walk all the way around the house so you have an idea what this house looks like. In 1985, from this point on, this was an addition that was added on, and it really has a 1980s feel to it. Doesn't have the old historic feel, so that's something that we're going to be taking off and creating a new addition that really ties in with the existing home. View from the rear. This is the house that is actually I think it's 3.3 feet from the property line. So we're trying to really focus to give a buffer between these areas, both in landscaping and also create a better view of that home, a nicer appealing elevation for them, as well as to try to increase that dimension between the two houses. We've done everything we can, and we'll see that in future slides, to show how we've taken that south wall and pushed it back as far as we can go, try to make sure there's no variance issues, as well as make it look like a nice, much nicer elevation. As you walk through between the two homes, again, you'll see some elevation, some landscaping throughout there. This is an existing bay from the kitchen that is going to be taken off, and you can see now over here, kind of see that there's a little bit of a cantilever there, and that again is going to be removed. This is a view of that same side yard from the backyard from the east, looking towards the west. Again, you can see the neighbor's home there and our home here. This is the rear view of our home, again, 1980s, 85 edition, the old historic 4-square up in front. And you can start to see some of the grade change here. We're really sloping down quite a bit from the backyard, and our driveway slopes all the way down to the park area where you turn in park. This garage is going to be turned into living space in the basement. Foundation is going to stay, and you can see as right now the deck is over that garage. So we're going to leave that foundation intact and build up from that point to make a second floor addition. Here's our house and the house to the north. You can see our driveway again, and there is quite a bit of landscaping and quite a bit of distance between the two, which somewhat makes this elevation something that we need to address to make it pleasant to view from the north, because it is able to be seen as a whole from the north. Some of these slides I'll just put up there for reference, as we might get to them later on. This is the survey again. This is the deck right there that is being taken off, and our addition is going to be put on that area, and a new deck is going to be put in this area right here. This is our site plan, saying the same thing, and I've got a little blow-up of that site so you can see. Here's our addition over the garage. Here's the new deck. And JR mentioned it, we have a little coffee balcony coming off the north, and we'll see reasons for that as we come further along and see some of the elevations and model pictures. From the north elevation, again, I mentioned this is a 4-square home that really didn't have a lot of the features of a 4-square. We've taken that and hopefully created a better 4-square traditional looking home, widening that front porch, lining up the windows, making everything fairly symmetrical and fairly in line. You can see the only change, and you'll see that better on the next slide, is really this chimney that you can see kind of in elevation, but you won't see in reality because it's so far back. This is our overlay drawing that shows that the only changes in the front really is this front porch, as well as all the window changes we mentioned before. From the north side, this we'll talk about a little bit. Again, this is the 1985 addition right through here. This was the original four square home and the front porch that's there. What we originally did was try to create this area as the existing building, in quotes. This obviously is only the existing building to this point, as it's reflected up here. But we put an addition here to try to create this as one original building in mass, and this being our new addition. We've done that by creating this elevation somewhat symmetrical about this bay. This entry portico is again tied in with this as far as the details are concerned, and we've brought our roof down, as JR mentioned, to try to create another subordinate size of this building, massing and also in scale. This is the coffee bar we mentioned before that's entered from the family room right over here. It's a nice little detail because what we tried to do, remember, this foundation is the existing foundation of the garage. If we carry this straight up, we're actually pushed out in front of this addition. We've actually pushed back the addition at this area, so we have a 2-foot dimension change from this elevation, this wall to this wall. And in doing that, we'd have to have some kind of roof treatment in this area. So rather than having a 2-foot roof that really is kind of an awkward situation, it was suggested, and we really like the suggestion, that we create a further balcony, create actually a 4-foot deep balcony in this area and make it a nice symmetrical element about those doors. Again, we have this deck off the back and a chimney off the back for a fireplace in the family room. This is the north elevation with the overlay. You can see that this is the existing house that's shown here, and this dashed line and shading area is the new addition area that we're putting on there. So it is somewhat substantial that we're adding on, but again, we're keeping within our bulk limits, and we're keeping within our setbacks, so there are no variances. From the rear, again, this is the 1985 edition that really had a lot of 1985 characters to it. We're going to go to a much more traditional element or elevation that would really carry a lot of the elements around the house that we have throughout the house. Again, in the rear elevation, you're really only going to see, as far as massing or overlay is concerned, just the chimney that will be changing as far as the size of the rear elevation. On the south elevation, again, this was the original 4 square, and there's a lot of different things happening here. Like I said, there's a cantilevered area right here that we saw in that slide, that picture. No windows throughout this area, clear stories, transom windows, deck over the garage. There's a lot of different things happening there. We're simplifying quite a bit of that. We're aligning the windows. We are keeping a portion of this because this is a non-conforming portion of the house that if we tear it down, we can't rebuild it in that area, but it really is important for our floor plan to have that, especially for a couple of reasons. Again, this is an existing foundation. If we take that away, we have to cover that foundation with something. So it's better to leave this element intact and work around that. We've taken away that cantilever that I mentioned here. We pushed this whole elevation back to conform within our setback area, and I think really made this elevation a much better looking elevation and keeping it in style with the architecture of the day. Again, this is our overlay showing the existing house in the new areas, and again, it is different, but again, it is also within our bulk area calculations. We'll get into some of the demolition plans now. It's fairly basic. We're leaving, like I said, the foundation work for the garage area. This is the basement plan. We are doing some work. We're taking out the garage door. We're taking out areas for some windows. We are doing some interior remodeling to try to make this into more of a living space. On the first floor, this whole area here, this was the 1985 addition. We're taking that out, but we are building over that existing foundation and creating a family room in that area. Second floor, a lot of interior remodeling. We're taking out some walls in the front to make those windows line up. Same thing on that stair. We're trying to move a window over a little bit. Mostly interior remodeling. Again, this 1985 addition is coming off for the new addition. In roof plan, you can kind of see what we're trying to do here as far as making this the mass of the existing building and make this be the subordinate and smaller addition. We had to do some flat roof areas, which we can handle very easily with some nice roofing materials, and to make this, again, the smaller, lower height addition. floor plans. If you want to get into them, we can go through those later. First, second basement floor plans. The garage, as we originally planned it and presented it to you, was a double deep bay on one side and a single on the other, so a total of 3 cars. We've changed it to a 2-car garage, 2.5-car garage, kind of. It's a 25 by 24 dimension, and that's just to try to make sure that we're addressing the neighbors to the north in a nice style and not having this be a huge wall facing the property. Some other things for reference, which is the grading plan. We are doing some grading in this area to try to minimize the amount of slope towards that, or minimize the amount of retaining wall we have over there. Jared mentioned it, and I forgot to show it on another slide, that we are putting a retaining wall over here to mimic the retaining wall that's on the other side, or it's actually over here, and try to create a little bit less of a tall height on that rear elevation, because it is really, because of this dimension of the sloped ground over there, is really a 3-story building at that point. We're trying to minimize some of that. Landscaping plan. It's hard to see, it's a little small, but, and it's actually opposite, so you have to reorient yourself. Down is north. We are putting a lot of plantings over here to try to screen our new addition from the south. And there are existing some trees over on this north side, but we are doing extensive plantings along that north side as well to try to, again, screen the view from the house to the north. So we are doing quite a bit there, as well as the nice landscaping around the front and some areas around the back, as well as for the patio. Jer alluded to it, and I know you know we had initial presentation to you in September. We did come back with another presentation to the subcommittee on a different model, different shape of home, and I'll go through some of that at this point. This was our initial plan. Please, I apologize for the crudity of the model. It doesn't compare to the last one that was here.
Yeah, take us through this very quickly, because we may have some questions for you, but
sure.
Time is...
Do you want to see these model?
why don't you let us address those in the question and answer period if we have questions about those, because I think there might be, but yeah.
Okay. Oh, you want me to go? I'm sorry.
If you no, let's do that in the question and answer. Is there anything else?
I'm trying to think if there's anything else here. I think it was just models. That's it. Yep.
Okay, leave the massing model up of the final model if you would, and then Kathy, do we have a staff report for you?
Sure. There's also a massing model there that you might want to pass around.
Or, put up the north side. Do you have the north side?
Looking for that one right now.
That top one? Yeah.
That one's the new one, and that's the old one.
Thanks. As a big presentation, I know there's a lot of information, so I'm missing the new one.
Chairman Gerdes,
That's-
just a few comments. I know you've heard a lot of descriptive material, so I won't repeat any of that. I will note that this neighborhood, these types of lots are really difficult. In this case, you have a lot that is fairly long, so it allows a significant amount of additional square footage beyond what is currently in the existing house. However, the lots are very narrow, so you do have the direct relationship to neighboring properties. The petition, as now before you, requests no variances. This project is under the allowable building scale based on the understanding that this is not a complete demolition, so the portion of the basement under the main house is exempted from the building scale calculation. In addition, no zoning setback variances are required. We know in this particular neighborhood, the zoning board has a history of not supporting variances because of the close nature of the homes. Importantly, in order to comply with the zoning setback, particularly on the south side, staff will need to be vigilant during the review of the final plans, because it's not the wall that needs to be set back in order to comply with the zoning setback, the 15-foot setback, but the furthest extent of the house. So actually the edge of the eave, the edge of the gutter. So the wall will need to be set back further. So you will see in the conditions of approval to assure that as reconstruction occurs that we're really meeting that line. We are requesting that the south property line be staked by a licensed surveyor, as well as that 15-foot setback line. So it is important and it is significant that any walls that are being reframed, any walls that are being rebuilt as part of this proposal now have been pulled back to assure that that 15-foot setback measured from the furthest extent of the house is met. At the request of the petitioner, we did contact the chairman, and a subcommittee was formed to meet with the property owner. I think there were two, maybe 3 meetings. I don't remember. This project is now presented, does reflect a simplified design, massing that has been reduced. Both the height of the rear mass has been stepped down a few feet, as Mr. Locey described, and has also been pulled in to comply in all areas with the setback. Despite that, we do recognize that from the neighbor's perspective, that the addition of the second-story mass is an impact and is significant. However, that is a difficult balance when a project is presented that is in conformance with the building scale and the zoning setback. So that is, at that point, we really do need to look to design elements and ways to mitigate the mass, and various steps were taken to do that, and I would look to the subcommittee members to talk further about that. I do want to mention we did receive the landscape plan on Thursday. City offices were closed on Friday. We didn't have a chance to review that. However, in these types of projects, it's not unusual for us to actually delay consideration of the landscape plan and bring that back to you at a later date. As the structure starts to take shape, our city arborists may be able to go in and really get a much better sense of where additional vegetation would be appropriate, what types of vegetation will survive in areas that have fairly heavy shade, and a way to really look at some screening and buffering that could be significant to help at least to mitigate some of the impact of that mass. With that, I'll let you turn to questions and respond to any that you might have.
Thank you, Kathy. Any questions for either the staff or the commissioners? Or the petitioners, or the petitioners?
I have a question. The last time you were here, on the south elevation, didn't you block out some windows, and now they're, and we see them again here?
Yes, they are. The windows you're referring to are up here, and both those windows are going to be existing on the exterior, but they will be drywalled on the interior, so that the floor plan does work. But from the exterior perspective or exterior view, you will see windows. They'll just be black.
But last time you had eliminated them?
Exactly.
Okay. Okay. And I have another question about windows. On the rear elevation, would you consider putting shutters on the 2 second-story windows to kind of, you know, mimic the front elevation? The back seems a little plain to me.
I've thought about that. The rear elevation, and all elevations actually have currently only have shutters on the front.
Right.
You know, it's not, and it is fairly traditional to do that. A lot of times in those periods, they had a certain amount of money you could spend, and you didn't want to do that design element throughout the rest of the house. I don't see a reason why we can't do that.
Oh, just a thought.
Yeah.
And then, as you drive into the driveway, on the south elevation, we see that little short, small window. What is the purpose or the reasoning behind that little teeny tiny window on the north elevation?
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. We'll get to that. That's a window above the stairway.
Oh, okay.
Is that what you're referring
yes.
to?
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. The stairs coming up right there, so it's really can't be pulled back.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't get that. Okay, that's fine. And then I had another question about the garage. You know, this house is turning out to be very, you know, pleasing and charming. And then I think, you know, when you get back to the garage, it's a little disappointing. You know, it's just, you know, it could be such a pretty part of the backyard. Have you ever thought about putting a little more detail into the garage to make it just a charming structure because it is viewed from the backyard and the neighbor and everything else?
No, we actually really hadn't. We had created a much larger garage at one time. One thing that isn't shown here is that we are planning, and this isn't responding to your question, sorry, but we are planning to have a basement area underneath here that's going to be a storage area. I just wanted to mention that.
Okay.
But as far as detailing, no, that's this is the garage, and as far as adding detail, that would be great. The only concern I have is bulk issues, and we're by not increasing the square footage, we'd be okay with that. So no, we could add more, and some of the detailing would be reflected in some of the work at the eave line. there's, you know, there maybe shutters around some of the windows or, you know, that kind of thing.
It could just be a very pretty part of the whole project, and it just kind of falls flat when you get back there. And, I think that's it. Was that?
Other questions? Fred?
Yes, I may have misheard you, but I thought in your presentation you said that in order to improve the separation of the house from the property to the south of it, which is recognized as being fairly close, that a chimney on the south elevation was being relocated, moved to the east. And maybe I misheard you, but I don't see that. I mean, I see a chimney at the east, but I don't see the one you're referring to on the south that gets changed.
No, if I did say that, I misspoke. There's an existing chimney on the south elevation. You can see it right here. That is not being affected. It's not being moved at all.
I see that stays. So
and there was the chimney that we're showing is on the west or the east elevation. I'm sorry, and we never had wanted it. Actually, originally, I guess we did have it.
Yeah.
Maybe
This is the first plan.
There's been so many iterations since then. I forgot.
Yeah, maybe it was you were referring to a previous scheme was relocated.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
You know, I was wondering if we could just get, I know you went through a big process with the subcommittee, and I guess I'm more concerned about how you worked with the petitioner to mitigate that appearance of mass. Did you have, what were you focusing on, or what did you think was successful and not so successful?
Guy, you want to do that, or you want me to do it?
Go ahead.
Well, I think that the first thing we have to think about on this house, there's kind of two overriding factors. The first is that there's very little of this house that's visible from the street, other than the front of the house. So the impact of this addition and the existing house, frankly, is to the two neighbors. Beyond that, from the street, it's really hard to see what's back there now even. I think that's probably true in this resolution as well. What we were trying to do is, the existing house is a very confusing kind of architecture behind the front mass of the four squares. So we first wanted to bring order to that. And the idea is that the back portion of the house should be subordinate to the front portion of the house. The front portion of the house should have a kind of a regular mass to it, which would be consistent with the architecture of the original building, even though it's a little larger in scale than the original building. But moreover, we wanted to just bring some order to the design. Now, it's a large home, and I think if you want to show us the pictures of the existing home, I think they actually tell us more than these models do in terms of what the setting is. And if you just bring us around the back and the side on some of those pictures, like that's a good picture right there. And this is what you have now. It's quite a confused massing. We didn't want to present a big wall to this neighbor on the north, and so that's where we brought in the idea of the balcony and the idea of breaking up the mass. And I think that's fairly successful. It's a big wall, and if you saw that elevation from 100 yards away, it would read as a very large mass. I don't think you ever do it. You travel down the driveway, you stand in the backyard of the adjacent property, and I think it's in a much more manageable scale because of that. Is it ideal? I'm not sure it's ideal. I think it is much improved, and I think that given the constraints of the lot and the existing home, it's a better house than we're starting with, and so I applaud that. You know, that's kind of the thought process. I don't know if I have much more to add on there.
I agree, it is much improved. It's from the last meeting in September.
And Kurt, did you spend the same time on the south?
Yeah, we walked around the whole, if you look at the south elevation, some of the things we did on the south elevation was the bulk of the chimney was much greater, and the models, the massing models are only cardboard, so they don't show this, but the elevation, the side elevation shows how we narrowed the chimney so that it steps back. It's not quite as bulky, if you will, from the rear elevation. Shutters might be an improvement. I think that's a nuance to me. It might work, it might not work, but I would be willing to let the homeowner make a decision on that. Again, you don't see it from the street, so it doesn't really particularly bother me. I think the massing of that chimney being smaller is helpful to the two neighbors, though. I think that's I don't know that there was a lot more.
Well, we're operating under the assumption that the basement entrance, those doors, is necessary. This whole below-grade section is
So
necessary.
you got to go back around to the north, north elevation. For there you go.
So all of that is necessary.
Well, the driveway currently comes down that low, and it's close enough to the houses. Is that?
Does it need to stay that low?
Well, I don't know.
Because that's what creates the height.
Actually, it does. The
It does?
grading of the ground in this area, this is raised. This is the actual grade of the property as it extends to the rear. So to raise this up, it's going to affect drainage to the
Okay.
neighbor to the north.
Okay, so
Yeah, that's kind of why we decided
to keep it?
use that sleight of hand of the balcony to sort of, push one plate back. The addition, it's a two-dimensional drawing, but on the model you can see this surface is set back, and then by kind of using that porch as a datum to kind of hold the first floor from the street, that we.
I think it looks much better.
Yeah,
Looks
and they
great.
intend to bring a retaining wall kind of wrapping around there on that side to kind of like cradle that entry door there so that it's not, a sharp corner at that particular point. It's kind of difficult because the lot takes a dip and has some, interesting topography for that part of town.
And you also use different materials in terms of shingles and the siding, and can you tell us a little bit about that discussion? Because I think that seems like a
Well, that was offered by the petitioner. That wasn't a direction on our part. I mean, what we were explaining to him in one of our early subcommittee meetings is that we were looking for devices to reduce the mass of the structure. So reducing the roof line, adding some kind of element that would break up a three-story wall, such as the balcony. Again, we didn't design this. We just offered criticism as to how, what the particular challenges were, and we saw the challenges as being impact to the neighbors as the number one challenge. And so, I think all of the design changes were, an effort to try to respond to those criticisms. So.
And we felt that size of the larger portion was a credible mass to present to the side. I mean, that's something you probably can find in a lot of instances in town in these types of properties. We would have liked to have seen them do that to the opposite side, but the problem is with the existing conditions and the zoning setbacks, that just would have been impossible to achieve. The closeness of those structures, though, precludes really getting a good look at that angle, and in fact, having that upper wall further back in one sense allows them more breathing room at that height of the two structures.
Other questions for either staff or petitioner?
I have a question for you, Mr. Gerdes. I have two areas of questions that are still issues of concern, and the first one is the porch. I've done a lot of research on four-squares in this area, and a four-square house is, it was a builder style. It was something, it was kind of tract housing back in the turn of the century. Very simple, 4 rooms on bottom, 4 rooms on top. There were typically 3 presentations for a porch, either full width, half width, or a single entry, just like a portico. So I'm looking at your front porch. Why don't you extend that all the way across? Because that's typical of a four-square. You need to have it all the way across.
That was our original presentation to you. The reason that we're not doing it is it's purely setback issues. On the south side, our existing home, this line of the existing home is actually 2 feet over the setback line. So to be able to make this front porch fully as large as it can be without going over that setback line, this is the extent that we could make that porch.
Okay, so that explains to me why it looks kind of out of proportion there. So my suggestion would be, would you consider just leaving the original porch? I mean, you're interested in preserving the vintage look of your house, and that's really a vintage detail. The only one you have on the front is your porch that you currently have, and that is kind of a four-square detail. When you design to, follow zoning, it just makes the porch look out of character with the four-square and kind of out of proportion with the rest of the facade. So, if you want to preserve as much as the four-square features as you can, I would suggest that you just keep that original front porch.
And you also lose those 2 windows to the right. The outline of those get lost as well when the porch extends over them, which is kind of a shame.
Actually, we wanted the full front porch, and the last time we presented it was actually a recommendation from the committee that we bring it in 2 feet on both sides. Part of it wasn't even relative to zoning at that particular time. It was more out of respect to the neighbor to the south. There was a comment made that their front porch goes and extends to the full length of their home. And so there was a concern that by extending all the way to the edge of the home, it would be too close to the house to the south. And that's why the recommendation came back to push in 2 feet. It wasn't until later when we were talking with the city that we also recognized at that point the added benefit was it wouldn't require a zoning. But we're certainly not opposed to doing the full length. We actually preferred that on the first pass, and this was a concession that was made per the recommendation of the committee.
Okay.
Actually, that wasn't a subcommittee comment. I made that at our first meeting. I made that when we were all together. And that was kind of a response to the closeness of the neighbor. And they have a porch too. And it was almost going to be so close that it would be like past the sugar. And I just thought maybe that would be too much. I honestly, to tell you the truth, the way it looks on the model, I don't know that it necessarily is that unsatisfactory. I mean, everybody has their opinion about it, but.
Well, I'm just.
And there was the zoning setback issue too, so the idea of possibly, now one thing that drawing shows is the pediment over the porch, whereas this one just has it horizontally, disposed.
Well, that's a response to just kind of the funny looking porch to pull in the sides like that. And the other thing was just trying to maintain the 4-square style, which seems to be important to you, and also some of the vintage details. So maybe you could just all avoid it by keeping that original front porch.
It's also, one of the major concerns that the clients have, that they have a place to mount on the front porch and have a porch swing, something traditional in that area. That wouldn't be able to be done in the existing size of that porch. So it is a very large concern of them to get a larger porch in this area.
Okay. And then the other question I have concerns the appearance of mass on the sides still. And I'm looking, it's much improved from last time we saw it, but the one question I have for you is, you want to maintain the integrity of that original house. And you can see it on the bottom elevation here, how when you extend the original house roof line back, you're actually making it look more imposing. So I'm just wondering if you gave any consideration to just keeping the original roof line of the original house and then further reducing the 2-story roof line. I'm thinking, did you think about anything like maybe a 1.5-story addition where you would have dormer windows on that second floor, just really reduce that roof line where you get the space. You might have clipped ceilings in some of those bedrooms upstairs, but yet it wouldn't be so imposing to both your neighbors on both sides. And then you would really, because at this point it's making, to me, it looks like the addition looks dominant to the original house, the way it just looks really massive. So I'm wondering if you reduce that roof line more, if you would consider doing that, it might make the massing appear less imposing. Just wondering what your thoughts are on something.
We actually did look at quite a few of those things that you mentioned. We talked about a mansard roof at some point to try to create that kind of a swooped mansard roof there, to try to create that kind of rough area and have some dormers in that area. The problem with that, there's a lot of different codes we're running into, as well as square footage that we'd be losing. Mainly the 6'8" dimensions, because this is all master suite in this area, and you need to have 6'8" dimensions for all mirrors, for all toilet areas, for all showers. There's a lot of things that we couldn't deal with as far as the mansard roof and the height is concerned. Besides the fact that we did reduce our plan quite a bit to try to get to this square footage. Additional square footage lost would really affect our plan in a very negative way.
So it's mostly a square footage issue.
It's a square footage issue. At the same time, the clients weren't enthralled with the look of a mansard roof. They liked the look of this style throughout the house.
I'm not suggesting a mansard.
Okay.
But I was just talking about maybe dormers, in a 1.5-story look.
Again, that would be a total square footage issue, because you do have to probably lose about 5 or 6 feet in each direction to be able to get the height wall that you need on the interior to use that space.
Right. Okay.
Other questions? All right, it's an opportunity for the public to address us on this issue, if there is any public comment. Come on up and introduce yourself. Let us know your name, and thank you.
My name is John Fitzpatrick. I live at 436 Illinois. I'm the neighbor to the north. My issue is the bulk, and from the front, there isn't much of a difference. We can discuss the merits of a porch or whatever, but when you look going from west to east, it's a big addition. When we look out our window, we'll see all that no one else will see. And we think it's inappropriate not only for any lot, but particularly for a house in the historic district. We don't have any qualms whatsoever about changing the house, but we just think that it extends too far back. And because of that, we feel it's inappropriate. The other issue that we have is regarding the garage. You mentioned it's a 2.5-car garage, and I don't know if I heard you correctly, but about a basement or something, or you're going to add a basement to the garage?
Should I respond?
Yeah, please.
Yes, we're just doing a depth foundation. We're going to basically have a basement underneath there that will have a stairway down to that storage area. It'll just be used for storage, basically bikes, that kind of thing, underneath that garage. It won't be, nothing will be visible other than a railing that allows you to walk down to that stairway to the basement.
What impact would that have on any trees back there as far as roots? There are 2 or 3.
I tell you what, if you could just finish your comments, we'll ask those questions
Oh.
for you. Thanks, I appreciate it. I just have to do something to run the meeting, but I'm doing my best here.
That's fine. Just to summarize our
Thank you.
comments, just too big.
Yeah.
Too much.
Thank you very much. Other public testimony, thank you. Come on up, introduce yourself.
I'm doing this right here, I'm not sure.
That works.
James T. Armstrong, I live at 442 East Illinois, house immediately to the south. My wife Marjorie. We have supported prior additions on both sides of our house. This one, however, we are not in favor of. It's simply too big, too massive, too imposing. I think there are other things that could be done. The architect mentioned a buffer. I'm not sure exactly what buffer he was referring to. The porch has been pulled in, according to the notes here, from the September 12th meeting. It was really done for zoning reasons, not to make a more pleasing presentation or streetscape. It's just too big, it's too imposing, and we would like to see perhaps it shrunk somewhat. I think Commissioner Atheson came up with a interesting potential solution, and that is to go from 2 stories to perhaps 1.5. There must be some other approach that would be acceptable to the petitioner as well as the neighbors, Mr. Fitzpatrick, and to us. But if you look at the schematic, or whatever it's called in an architectural sense, it is really huge. It's imposing. It's going to affect our light and air, sense of openness. There are also some mature trees between our house and the neighbors to the north. I'm not sure what's going to happen to those. I assume there's going to be a tree survey of some kind. Those trees are important because they form some of the buffer, if you will, between the 2 homes. It would be a shame to see those trees damaged. The previous, I shouldn't say that, the home at 444, as you know from the letter I sent into the commission, also requested a very comparable addition to their home. It was a 2-story addition, and the city, it happened to be the Zoning Board of Appeals, unanimously turned that down, citing the impact on our light and air. And I'm at a loss to understand, and certainly they would be completely flummoxed to find out now, a couple of years later, that what was not okay then is now okay at 440 Illinois. So it would be somewhat confusing in my mind. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Other public testimony? Come on up, thank you.
Hi, Frank Penn from 509 College. We're kind of like the third perspective in this. We look directly at the house from the north. So now as we look at it from our backyard, we don't see a lot of it. We see a little bit of it, and it kind of blends in. But this new addition, we're concerned about the size as well. And then we're also concerned about the trees that may be affected with that. Because right now, with the lots, like you said, are so close together that we're able to get a nice view of the trees and the landscape without a lot of house affecting it. And now there's going to be quite a big scale size house coming into our view that was never before. And so we just wanted to express our concerns about that and make them public.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Any other public testimony? All right, now it's the opportunity for us to deliberate. We got some deliberations?
Well, and I'd like to just start out by talking about that rear 1.5 story scale. We've talked about that. I think the staff was in on our conversation with that regard. In that regard, you know, there was not typically seen, but occasionally you'd have those Victorian mansards that might be tacked on, and there's one actually right next to the public library that's sort of like the tour de force type of that variety. And so we did suggest that as a way of kind of stepping down while still having a suite. There might be some clip ceilings, but sometimes you can pull that off by just having an overhang and kicking it out. So we did look at that. There was so much significant change, and we thought improvement in the overall strategy of bringing clarity to this, that I guess in a sense it was a collaborative, but also somewhat, let's just say, willful on our part to sort of impose certain things that we thought would be a benefit. And I think the clients feel that way, that it benefited them greatly. In fact, the plan even seems better inside. Now, I don't know that Kurt and I felt like we should be that heavy-handed that we were going to mandate the roof forms to the house. It's not, of course, I think, a significant Victorian foursquare to where we're treading on someone's hallowed ground by either the name of the designer or the particular style of the rest of the house. So with regard to that, I think to be that directive, I would rather have the whole committee in on that than doing that to the petitioner myself. I can see the possible value to that. So I just kind of wanted to start there because that's probably the biggest significant additional manipulation that might happen.
Well, you know, Guy, you're right, and I want to just point out a couple things. Here's a couple of things I have to just say. The first is that we were very hesitant to meet as a subcommittee because we didn't have a clear direction from the commission one way or another. And most of the time when we have a subcommittee, it's because the commission has directed some kind of change that everybody's generally has a consensus for, but we just can't do it in the meeting. We met instead and we said, well, let's do the best we can. The petitioner wanted us to do that, so we agreed to meet with them. But we warned them that, you know, we're giving them two commissioners' opinions here, not a consensus direction. On the other hand, what I think I'm hearing from the neighbors, and all three neighbors actually, is that the objection is less stylistic and more to bulk. And this house meets bulk, and this property is entitled to its bulk. We don't grade them on that. We don't get to say, no, you can't have a house. The zoning has already set up the ability for them to have this size house. So I don't hear people telling me, you know, I really don't like the position of these windows because of the way they impact my, you know, my view of my bedroom, or the, you know, I mean, it's not architectural concern, which is our purview. It's zoning concern, which is not our purview. And I can't make them have a smaller house. I agree. I think a smaller house is probably nicer on this lot, only because these houses are relatively small. Although it's a relatively large lot. It's just a question of what are you comparing it to, right? Mm-hmm. So they're entitled to the square footage by zoning. And I think, we're just doing our best to work within the rules to try to make the mass as the least imposing it can be on these neighbors. So that's kind of where I settled down on it. I will ask the question, because I said I would, regarding the basement. Could you walk us through that a little bit more? Where would the entrance to the basement be? How would that impact trees? And how, because we didn't hear very much about that basement to the garage. Please, go ahead.
As far as trees are concerned, I'll address that first. We really are not affecting any trees in this lot. The trees to the south, between the house and our house and this house to the south, we are planning to keep. We'll protect them in every way we can. If they do get damaged during construction, which I don't think there will be a lot of movement on that south side, it'll mainly be coming from the north, east, and west. That south side is not wide enough to really get a machine in. So even if it is damaged, we will be replacing that. That's, I'm sure, part of the stipulations that the city has. As far as the basement's concerned, let's try to get to that plan. The basement right now has...
and I'm sorry, I wanted to ask you about the basement to the garage.
Oh, okay.
Specifically.
Okay.
I think we understand the basement to the house.
Okay. And what was your question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's the question.
Probably the railing, was that the
So
question?
where would the entrance to this basement be?
Right along here. There'd be a stairway right in this area.
So it's basically
On the south
exterior
side.
stairway.
Yes.
And I'm sorry to make you do this, but if you go to your site plan,
Sure. Let's see here.
Are we looking at a metal railing or
There
a
you
wooden
go,
railing? Can you
So
describe
it's-
the
so it's
railing?
back there.
Yeah. Yeah, it would have to be, it has to have a 4-inch maximum opening between the spindles, and I would think it would be metal just for longevity and for structure's sake, because we do have quite a bit of drop there.
So that'd be an opportunity for landscaping or something like that. It's not on the, I was concerned that it wasn't on the other side, frankly, so. Other deliberations from anyone?
I just wanted to mention that we have not yet received a tree removal plan, an overall tree survey, so that is recommended as a condition if you decide to move forward with this. Before issuing a building permit, we would want to understand, for instance, which trees might be impacted by the excavation of the basement, understand species size, and perhaps require some pre-construction measures if appropriate. So that's a piece that's still missing.
I do have another nuance. This is really a nuance, but if you go to that front elevation again, I want to talk one more time about that porch. Can you make that right rendering larger by hitting your plus sign on the bottom there, all the way down? There you go. And then slide us over. There you go. Thanks. So there's two things going on here that are a little unsettling to me, and the street view is actually the view that I am most concerned about beyond, trying to resolve the rest of the building to have some order to it. The windows do line up with the doors and windows below, but they are not regularly spaced. I'd actually rather they didn't line up, and I'd actually rather see the second-story windows have a even rhythm across. I don't think that would be convoluted to your floor plan on the second floor. I think that the porch hides the position of the windows below.
Didn't you have it that way at one time? Weren't they evenly spaced at one meeting? Because I thought I said that I liked that better.
Well, this hasn't changed since the last 2 times we met, but I might have had it changed before that. I don't.
Yeah, I think you did shake it out, and I thought, oh, something.
Yeah, I would regularly space those. I would hold the position of the 2 outboard windows on the second floor even with the lower ones, and then I would space the 2 upper ones evenly so that from the street you don't see the spacing on the second floor is different. I don't think you'll ever perceive the difference between the upper and the lower windows in the middle if the outside ones are there. I'm not a fan. And Susie, I'd love to hear what you have to say about this on your Foursquare research. I'm not a fan of the eyebrow window over the front door. I actually think that it's a diminutive kind of detail, and I think that the porch reads better as the bigger porch. I'm ambivalent about whether it goes all the way across or is squeezed in a little bit, but I like the overall mass of the longer porch without the eyebrow, just because I think it's more
Like this.
keeping, like the model. I just think it's more in keeping with the scale of the building, you know, the little eyebrows.
And typically that eyebrow is usually on a more formal type of foursquare, and most times like a wraparound.
Yeah. So it's just a observation. I'm not sure it's the biggest thing driving the conversation here, but it's just some nuances. What do you think, Fred?
No. Well, on that last topic, the porch, I agree with Commissioner Atkinson about the idea of keeping the existing porch. For the preservation aspect, it's more in keeping with preserving more of the original house. And the character, I think, is, from my point of view, improved over the proposed larger porch. I think and there's a symmetry with the larger porch that doesn't, I think, really belong to the house anywhere else. The comment was made by the owner that apparently at the previous meeting, the commission recommended reducing the porch by 2 feet. Now, I just put that, it wasn't my recommendation, but I think not that I would be on either side of that issue, but I think it was in the context of feeling the house was too close to its neighbors. And that reduction of 2 feet was, I think there was an effort to find ways to mitigate the oppressive presence with the neighbors. And that was one suggestion that was put out there perhaps at that time. But I think Commissioner Athens has zeroed in, I think, a much better idea, and that's to keep the existing porch. I happen to be in agreement with that approach. I also agree with the chair earlier on saying that with the proposed changes, there is a better house than is there today. I'm referring to the character of the house, the simplicity. It eliminates the really chaotic assemblage of parts, some of them somewhat contemporary, some of them not contemporary, strange massing, very, very awkward existing conditions. And with the help of the subcommittee and the work that the architect has done, I think it's greatly improved. That still leaves us with the bulk issue or the mass issue, and I'm sympathetic to the neighbors' concerns about that. But I harken back to a previous meeting when Commissioner Berg said that perhaps that's a property right that they have also for their properties, that they should not be denied. If they, for example, wish to expand their house within the bulk ordinance, they would be permitted to do so. And so I would think the same would extend to this property owner.
Hey, Fred, on that front porch issue, can you go back to that? I was going to make you stop. There is something that's intriguing about not having the forced symmetry. What would you think about having the porch not symmetrical, pushed over to the left like it is in the original, but made larger to bring in the third window to from the left, so that and I'm worried that the existing porch is too small for this house without giving it a little more punch, but I'm thinking that there's something about the symmetry that is unsettling to me, and I like the idea of it being asymmetrical on that entry point, but I also like the idea of it having a little more weight to it in terms of just the resolution of the composition of the front elevation. What do you think, Guy? You have any thoughts on that?
I actually think the proposed porch without that pediment is a nice improvement. The house next door has a porch, and one of the charming and I think distinctive features of these streets in town, they're not our typical suburban 1950s, is that you can sit porch like in Lake Bluff, and I think that sort of interstitial zone between the inside environment and the street, and being able to sit out there with your family members and be able to actually converse with someone passing down the sidewalk. You know, I think that from a fabric standpoint, I think it's a tremendous advantage to incorporate that, and it helps bring these older homes alive. People identify with them. They think about the furniture they're going to put out there. Buy a magazine and just see how many quilts are on these banisters. I think you're beating these people up. I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with that porch. Take the pediment off. I think that of all the things about this house, that probably is the least intrusive one. And I agree with Kurt, space the windows right, but I think we're beating a dead horse on this porch. And I don't like the one on the left. I mean, it is original, but how original? I mean, do we know it's actually from the very inception of the house? I don't know. There's no way to know. I would never design one like that, guy.
Well, I can tell you why that looks kind of unusual, though, is because typically with a foursquare, it's very symmetrical on the front, and you would probably have 4 windows on the top that are lined up. you know, because, and that's why it looks
Yeah, this has been
unusual.
modified.
I mean,
a
take,
number of times,
take that
for
pediment
sure.
off then, and we talked about it in the subcommittee, but as I said, we were being pretty willful with what we were imposing on them, and it was sort of like, let's talk about that in the public forum, and by gosh, we sure are. You know, I actually think it's better on the model without it, it's cleaner, you know. Does it not go all the way yet? Doesn't go all the way, but I don't know that that kills it. Would it help to get rid of the hips and have it gabled on the side? I don't know that that would be a solution, you know.
Well, it's a hard house to look at straight on anyway, you know, as you drive by this house, so that the view perspective-wise changes your look at that. How about other deliberations? Anybody else?
Well, I was thinking with this petition that it reminded me of my days on the zoning board. It seemed like a zoning board matter that we used to get all the time about bulk and, you know, reducing mass and softening mass, and, you know, a lot of the solutions that the subcommittee and the petitioner came up with seemed to be the ones that I used to see. You know, we haven't talked about landscaping and its effect on softening the mass for the neighbors to the north and south, and I think that's a very important element as far as what the end result is going to be. So I really think that that's something we need to think about coming back to us. I do know that one of the neighbors, I think the neighbor to the south, did comment that this would never be approved by the zoning board, and actually somebody included a letter that paraphrased something I said back over 7 years ago regarding a similar petition about how this, you know, I wouldn't approve a petition because it affected the light and air, but I'm using different criteria here, and I have to agree with what the chair said, that this seems to be within all the criteria that the ordinance allows for a homeowner to have. So I support the petition with the condition that, you know, that we get to look at landscaping as far as further softening, you know, what you know, the neighbors are going to see. You know, the city council and the ordinance has decided that this is an allowable bulk. There's challenges with this property as the way it's, you know, the way it's set up next to the neighbors. But, you know, there's only so much you can do and allow both the neighbors some relief and the petitioner homeowner to have what they're allowed to have. So I'd be supporting the petition. And just a quick comment about the porch. I agree with Commissioner Berg. I like the larger porch on the front of the property, and, you know, as far as the eyebrow or the pediment, I can see how, you know, taking that off seems to soften it a little bit more, make it a little more appealing. So,
Jim?
Yeah, I'm supportive of the petition as well. I think it is within bulk and setback. That was important to me. I think the subcommittee did a nice job, and the homeowner was, I think, receptive to some of the ideas that you guided them in around the massing. I think the landscape plan we can address at that time to do further concealment of the mass. If I was next door on both sides, I'd have concerns of the same order, but I think they are within their property rights to design this house within the bulk and the setbacks. The porch, I like the bigger porch. You can get rid of the pediment, and the window spacing is fine.
Thank you.
And I just had a few comments
Sure,
too,
please.
kind of going back to what my questions were. Of course, I'm in support of keeping the original detail of the vintage porch. If you do extend it all the way across, though, I just ask that you go the full width. I know that requires zoning, but it just, if you're going to keep to a 4 square, it looks kind of funny just being pushed in a little bit. So either keep the vintage detail, which I think would be in keeping with wanting to preserve what we have here, and that would be my what I'm in favor of. And I also just want to mention, you know, the shutters really are not appropriate to a 4-square. It's usually very simple, so just remove, you know, all shutters and, you know, try to minimize the detailing on it. It's a very simple house, so try to keep it simple. I think my biggest concern is just that appearance of mass on both sides of the house. And for me, I don't think I've really seen enough alternatives here. I know it's come a long way with the subcommittee work, but I don't think I've seen enough alternatives with working with a roof to reduce that appearance of mass and a negative impact on both neighbors. I know it's within property rights, but we're in a neighborhood here, and you know, it just doesn't seem fair to me that there's such a negative impact on both neighbors. It seems like there's been a lot of concern in this neighborhood about not having a negative impact on your neighbor. So I would just like to see more exploration of maybe reducing that roof height, you know, maintaining the original roof height of the original house and then making that addition more subordinate to the original. So the original is always the highest and the addition is lower. And maybe that would, if you play with that roof line a little bit more, or the roof height, that might minimize that impact of mass there. Because as you have it right now on that north elevation, see how you kind of extended the mass of the original house back. If you just kept the original roof line and then just extended and maybe dropped it down even further, it just might you know, minimize that impact of mass. I just think there's some more you can do to minimize that impact on the neighbors on both sides.
Well, I think eliminating shutters is fine, but in a 4-square, then they would have included maybe a diamond lattice on the top half of the pane of the window. They would have included some sort of, you know, decoration within the panes.
No, those are muttons.
They would have done something.
Yeah. Well, sometimes they have plain, sometimes they have divided lights.
Yeah. And I really, you know, I don't want to discount the neighbors' issues. They're very troubling to me, and I think I speak for the whole board, and that we really understand that this is a large structure, and we all do feel very badly. I know I do. This is very tempting because it cleans up the back of this house and does make it a better building, but it is within their rights, and it is within what Lake Forest allows. So I have to be in favor of it as well. But I really do understand your concerns on all 3 sides. You know, it's really, you know, unfortunate.
Did you have a comment on the windows?
Yeah, I did. I just wanted to, the timing of this is just gotten away from me as far as showing what the clients had asked for. They wanted to do a muntin pattern on the upper panel of each one of these windows. So clear on the bottom with a 3/3 pattern above. I wonder if that was something you'd be leaning towards or not, but that's something that they did ask me to present, but I didn't have the time to get it on.
And would that be just on the front, or would that be all the way around, or?
All the way around.
Thank you. And in terms of the shutters, just a little more discussion, please, on the commission from that. Guy, what do you think? Do you have any comments on that one way or another? Or Fred?
No, I don't think it needs shutters, and I respect Commissioner Athenson's research on that subject.
I'm ambivalent on the shutters.
Yeah. To me, as long as the windows have a little more decoration,
I think I like
it's
what
fine.
looks best. How's that?
Yeah. Please, thanks.
We actually did not want the shutters, but we're told that it was more in keeping with the traditional 4-square. In one of our earlier meetings with the city, it was a recommendation that shutters would be more appropriate. So if we don't have to have shutters, we're fine with doing away with the shutters.
Is there a staff comment to that?
I don't recall making that comment. We would prefer no shutters. If there are going to be shutters, they do need to be sized appropriately and operational, which those don't appear to be.
Right.
I see, thank you. All right, anyone want to have a further deliberation, or is there a motion?
Well, can we make design elements a contingent upon approval? In terms of the porch? And
we could. I mean, I think I'm inclined to ask for a motion that eliminates the eyebrow at the front porch and spaces the windows evenly, as we discussed. On the shutters, I'm ambivalent as well, so I'm inclined to let the staff resolve that with the owner, since they're also ambivalent, it appears, unless somebody really thinks we shouldn't have those. But it sounds like Susie thinks we really shouldn't have those, so I could respect that too. We could eliminate the shutters as well if you'd like.
I'm ambivalent on the shutters.
Future homeowners will not be able to put on shutters onto this?
Actually, they will. Actually, that's the funny
Right.
thing about it, is they will be able to.
Right.
Just this homeowner?
Just as, that's exactly right. No, actually, this homeowner could come back and add shutters in the future too. I believe that's their right. So it's a kind of a funny nuance of the code. Did you want to comment on that?
Would they have to come back if they want to add shutters to this in the
If your
future?
approval was without shutters, then yes, we would come back. If you were silent on shutters, then,
I see.
again,
What
as
about
long as they
future
were appropriate.
homeowners? Would-
If the approval is without shutters, then it would need further consideration by the commission to add shutters.
So if we're silent about shutters, it would be, they could have, take them on or off.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
If staff determined that it was not consistent with the design guidelines, then we could bring the matter before you.
So a homeowner in Lake Forest, just so I understand, if they wanted to put shutters on their house, they'd come to the city for a building permit to do that, and at that point, they'd realize that they'd have to bring it back to the commission?
Possibly. It would depend on the house. It would depend on the significance of the house. It would depend on the style. With anything that comes before us, we do review the criteria in the code to determine if they're met or not.
Okay, thanks.
Want to try
Yeah, so I make a motion to submit the petition as submitted, contingent upon the following conditions, to review a landscape plan. Well, these are all the conditions that are already in the packet, but foremost, a landscape plan, getting rid of the eyebrow, centering the windows on the front facing evenly, and keeping the outside ones aligned where they are.
All right. The motion's been made by Commissioner Preschlack. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Commissioner Ransom. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
So we have one opposing vote. That motion passes. Thank you very much. All right. Our next agenda item is a new petition. It's a request for Certificate of Appropriateness approving 2 additions to the residence of at 142 South Stonegate Road. And sure, go ahead. Anybody else need a quick break? I'm going to ask Guy if there's any ex parte conflicts. I see none. Anybody need a quick break? Okay, let's go ahead and take a break. If you could give us 1 minute, thanks.
Pass the water, please, Bill.
And a little bit of the architectural history of this property. The original house was designed in the French eclectic style by Russell Walcott and was constructed in 1926. The house is sited on the south end of the tableland of the property and actually is gracefully integrated into the ravine edge. As you walk into the home, it definitely cascades down as the ravine does, and the back of the house opens up, overlooking the ravine. The residence was constructed prior to the adoption of the steep slope ordinance by the city, thus the ability to locate the house on the ravine edge. And as a side note, the entire residence is a legal non-conforming structure, all sitting within inside the steep slope setbacks. So that being the case, really, created some difficult challenges as far as where we could place additions on the property and how we went about doing so. So we have worked with staff for quite a bit in sizing the addition, locating the addition, trying to make it as conforming as possible while still trying to meet the scope and requirements of my client. A little bit of a history of the additions here. The garage addition is being proposed because the existing openings of the garage aren't quite wide enough to get a vehicle in there. So we are proposing adding to the length of the garage to allow for appropriately sized garage door openings. Therefore, they're able to park their vehicles inside the garage. This also allows the increase of the second floor area in that area of the residence. Currently, that's a servant's quarters. It really hasn't been updated since the home was built. There's about 3 or 4 bedrooms up there that really they're really not used. They're very small rooms and certainly the servant's portion of the house. So the idea would be we'd increase the garage size and then revamp this second floor portion of the house as well to allow for a guest suite. And then one benefit of the garage addition, and you'll see in the site plan coming up, is that its location better helps separate the formal auto court in front of the house from the existing, I wouldn't call it a service drive, but the existing drive that the family uses every day to access the garage. The other addition we're looking to do is an open porch addition to the east off of the master bedroom. The reason for this is that the current scale of the master bedroom is not in keeping with the size of the home or the elegance of this home. It's a very small master bedroom, an ordinary closet, and a small bathroom. So by allowing us to do this open porch addition on the first floor and second floor closet addition, we're able to increase the square footage of the master bedroom. The bathroom will remain as is, and just basically add a closet to the end of the bathroom. So it's a small change, but it really will enhance the suite for the master bedroom. The idea of the open first floor is to allow for the transparency that's currently there. As you enter the drive right now, that's the direction you enter and approach the home. So by keeping an open first floor, you're able to see out into the ravine and really doesn't block those views that are there now. Also, by making a closet in the addition, we're really minimizing the amount of load we're putting on the structure because it is inside the steep slope setback. So we're very mindful about how much load we're imposing on top of this tableland as it approaches the ravine edge. The addition is sympathetic in forms and subservient to the massing, so we've kept the hip roofs that you'll see on the residence. We've pushed the eave lines down so that it is subservient to what's currently there, and basically the roof lines cascade down towards the additions and really just kind of focuses you in the main entry of the home. We're going to use appropriate materials. The existing face brick that's there will be matched. There's very subtle points on the corners that they're the same materials, so they aren't very noticeable, but we'll also incorporate those in the new design of the garage. We've introduced some stone lintels on some of the portions of the house that don't currently have them to keep a uniform feel as you went all the way around the house. So this is our partial site plan. You can see by this triangular kind of line here, that's the ravine edge. And you can see how the house is sited right up along it. We have a terrace out the back that really overlooks this ravine, which is really an elegant space. I don't show it on here, but the steep slope setback line, I know this isn't a zoning meeting, but the steep slope setback line is running right through this portion here and kind of comes up in this area here. So the garage addition that we are proposing does become conforming, and that was the idea behind the placement of the garage. The master bedroom addition, though, you can see still continues to follow along the ravine edge or possibly even a little bit away from it. So we're not proposing any additions that are any closer to the ravine edge than currently the house resides. So you can see here what we've done is increase the garage door opening sizes so we can get a vehicle in here, and then added a third bay. Currently the garage is a 3-car garage, 3-door openings, but they're not quite wide enough, so we have 3 doors in this configuration to allow for the vehicles to be parked. Reconfiguring this current overhead door to 2 swing doors to make it appear more of a garden sort of shed idea, and it can be accessed from the formal court at the beginning. I'm sorry, the center of the home here, and then we have an open porch in this end that will be accessed off of the library and just create a nice outdoor living space to enjoy the ravine further. On the second floor, as I mentioned, this area here is currently all servants' wing. There's a small little laundry room in this area here. We're increasing slightly so we can get a little bit better space there, and the remainder of the area will be reconfigured into, as I mentioned before, a master suite for guests. On this side here, you can see the existing master bedroom is in this area. Right around where this dormer is where the existing master closet is, so it's a really small closet. You can see by that how small the bedroom would have been. Existing bathroom to remain, and the new closet addition off to the end there. So here's an example of the garage addition and how we're trying to be sympathetic to the existing design. This is the existing garage. This is where the current overhead door is facing the formal auto port. That dormer is existing, and so we're just basically reducing the eave line, the ridge line, picking up on that simple pointing idea, and continuing the addition on to the north. You can see here is an image of the north end of the current garage. There was a door and a stair here originally designed. The stair has deteriorated over time, has since been removed just because it was becoming a hazard. So the idea would be to pick up on that idea. We would add, the addition would be very similar, a little bit different window pattern. I believe that the windows there look a little bit too wide. I was looking for something a little bit more on the vertical side. To be more in keeping with some of the other fenestrations on the residence. And then a simple arch-top dormer to match the other ones on the garage. Very similar to the door that was there, but instead of a door, just a door. And then on the garage door side, this is where there were 3 garage door openings. We're revising it to 2 larger openings and then adding the 3rd section in this area here. These dormers are all existing and remain, and you can see the new dormer that was added to the end of the garage there. Over at the master bedroom wing, this is looking, this is if you were standing at the ravine edge looking back at the residence. You can see how the open porch design here really allows the views to continue through this space, making it a little more transparent and less massive. Reduce the eave line again and ridge line, so that the space again is built into the roof line, very minimizing the massing. From the end, again, just a simple replication of the roof lines that were there before, just in a more diminutive nature. And we did use an arching sort of oval style bracket to the porch columns to kind of pick up on some of the other arches that are subtle throughout the house. Just kind of, again, another little nod towards the design that was already there. One thing we'd like to point out here, you can see this dormer right in this area here, and again up here in the photo. That was a later addition, I believe, probably when the master bedroom was renovated. Give a little light to the closet. We don't feel that it's conforming, and we actually feel that it may detract from the existing original design of the home. So we're proposing to remove that dormer. The homeowners don't feel that it's necessary for their everyday needs. So pretty much that is what we're proposing to this residence. As I said, there were a lot of zoning issues that we had to look at. We have worked with staff on those, and we believe that what we're presenting here is subservient and in keeping with the existing property and respectful to that.
Thank you. Is there a staff report?
Thank you, Chair and Parents. Just a couple things. Just to comment that both of the proposed additions are located on the side of the home opposite of the ravine, so they're on the further side away from the ravine. And this is really a project where the homeowners and the architect met with city staff very early on, potentially over the last year, to discuss possible expansion options for the property. A ravine runs through the southern portion of the lot, and given the restraints and sensitivity surrounding ravine and bluff properties, over the course of the year, the petitioners had several conversations with the city engineer. The city engineer does have the ability to approve this type of improvement and supports the proposed addition, given the limited impact they will have on the ravine, and as well as the proposed construction technique that is really minimal to the site. There are findings in support of the proposed addition in your staff report. In general, the materials and detailings are consistent with the existing house. The massing seems to be appropriate, and I would be happy to answer any questions. There are just a few standard conditions in the staff report. I'd be happy to go over those if you have any questions. But we are recommending approval at this time.
All right, thank you, Megan. Do we have any questions or comments for the staff or the petitioner?
I have a question for the petitioner. On the east elevation, the garage elevation, Did you, there we go. No. There we go. Did you consider adding any windows? I know I'm stuck on windows tonight. Did you consider adding any windows to the addition? It just looks like a long expanse of uninterrupted brick.
Yeah, I did consider putting some windows on that elevation. However, as simple as the existing garage was with just a door at the center dormer directly above it, I didn't want to take away from that. It was very simple, and I didn't want to have the addition start to detract from, again, the main entry, the turret and the main entry area. And so I just was trying to keep that simple idea moving on to the north. So we would not be opposed to adding windows, but that was the reasoning for not putting windows there.
It just looks solid to me. I would like to see it broken up a bit.
Sure.
Do we have any ordinance against uninterrupted brick? I know that in Riacca there was.
Spacing of windows is a criteria for us to consider, but there's not a requirement
There isn't,
for how
okay.
often they need to be. There's a requirement for light and ventilation in rooms.
Okay.
I think it makes it in the garage, though.
Yeah, I just have a question along those lines. I grew up, I spent a good deal of my childhood in this house. It's a beautiful house, and maybe I was young and we were riding mini bikes from the house to as far as we could, really, before neighbors started complaining, but outside of Stonegate, and I thought the garage was
There'll be a
massive.
condition to this.
I thought the garage was massive, right? I mean, and maybe the cars were smaller then, and I was little, but, can you just, give me the sense of hardship for even adding to the garage? Because, to me, the beauty of the home is driving up to the front and seeing the turret entrance, and you kind of feel like you're in a castle a little bit, and, I don't know that this will, totally take away from that, and I don't want to prey on my sentimental childhood here, but can I just hear from you why the garage needs to be bigger and what the homeowner hardship is to, just because I spent some time there, and I'd just be curious to hear it.
Absolutely. Let me let the homeowner,
Yeah.
Leslie, speak to that.
I agree with you 100%. We've lived there for almost 8 years, haven't put a car in the garage yet to not fit one in. So, last winter, I think I called Kathy. I said, you want to bring a shovel over and help me dig out? Because we can't get a car in. The last homeowners, I asked them what kind of cars. They had 2-seater cars. That's all they put in the garage. So, it's just not practical. I wish we could. We've tried to investigate every option we possibly could. But there's just no simple answer here. The way the doors are, they come on this hinge and come out, so the hinges stick out about 6-8 inches. So it even makes the small opening even smaller. So I agree with you, wish we could, but that's why we're here.
And to your point about the turret there, I guess I just want to point out how the garage is really protecting this formal auto court from this other area where cars may be parked and other things like that. One of the other designs we had proposed putting a wall out there because the homeowner liked the idea of somewhat protecting that back side of the house. And I think the garage addition does that for her. And perhaps, maybe adding a window maybe would add some elegance to it, and maybe that's something we can consider.
Can you talk about the challenges of matching this brick? Have you looked into that at all? How do you feel about the odds of being able to do that?
Yeah, I don't think that we're going to have too much trouble with it. The brick it's almost a common brick. It's a very it's a light buff color. I think that we can do that fairly easily. One of the things that we are proposing is obviously we're putting the addition in this area here, so we're going to be removing this area of the brick. So one of the things I would like to see us do is salvage some of that brick, reincorporate it into the design, whether it's used on maybe the auto court side so that we don't see any sort of discrepancy, or wherever we use it. But the other thing to look at is we're breaking up the wall by setting this back. So if the brick doesn't exactly match, it's not like we're trying to tooth it in and blend it exactly with the wall and continuing the wall on. So that is one benefit of being able to play with the massing a little bit and give an interruption to the existing brick.
And could you show us the opposite elevation again real quick? Thanks. There you go. Other questions for the staff?
Can you put the plan up now?
Oh, no, I want you to change. Just kidding.
Okay, that's good. No,
Second floor or first?
Put the first floor up because this one isn't fair. Did you happen to have any models knocking around when you were designing this? You know, the last petitioner had a model, the first guy had a model.
I know, I've been
And it's not
outdone.
like I want to mandate models for everything, because it's not necessary in a lot of cases. And I don't think it's an issue so much of your elegance with handling some of these things is I really noticed it when you had this up on the screen, and it's hard to get a good look at your facade because it goes a couple of ways, right? So you really don't get that, you know, expanse like you get on the last petition in a two-dimensional representation. And it just struck me that a model would probably go far to help us with understanding the impact, because I sympathize with the garaging issues, with the impact, because this is a lovely home. This is one of the gems on Stonegate. I'm wondering now, with your additions going out like you've done, and you've tried to subordinate those, but you're creating a deeper catcher's mitt than what exists right now. Okay, you know, you got more light and air and angles from, say, the middle of that thing, but because you're going out, I'm wondering what effect that's going to have on the house. And I'm thinking a model might help to get a better handle on if that's a good thing to do to the house. And you know, you show one elevation to the commissioner to my right, and her point is good that, gee, there's no window in that wall. It looks kind of funny, but I was looking at the other elevation when she was talking in the plan and remarking, well, they've only got one French door on that living room, and you think somebody would want to knock a hole in there. So this guy was big on wall.
Right.
And his name is Walcott, so it's okay. But I'm saying that maybe, because I'm kind of sensitive more and more as I'm seeing this, as you present it, that maybe there's a little bit more here we need to kind of think about for the petitioner's sake, the homeowner's sake, because I'm sure they don't want to do anything adverse. And as a designer, sometimes it's helpful three-dimensionally to look at this. Because I'm wondering, on your site plan, you have to go to the landscape plan to see the garaging. There's an ample garage driveway behind here. Is that existing driveway as far as the extent of it to the west?
This driveway that you're seeing here?
Yeah, I guess, do you have the driveway represented on that drawing?
Yes, right here's the edge of the existing driveway.
And then,
Take a look at the landscape plan.
yeah, the landscape plan, I
This is
guess.
the
So you
existing
could back a car up out of these two new stalls, and you've got quite a distance you can back up.
Yes.
Right? Because I'm wondering, I'm a little bit afraid that maybe your garage extension, while it's rather neat and orderly to just extrude it and pinch it, if you're not maybe, I'm wondering if maybe you should shift that to see right now, see those, and it might be a graphic design thing, see how dark those additions look, and they look like they maybe are constricting a little bit too much, and the original designer would maybe be going, oh, don't do that, you know what I mean, you get it now, don't you?
No, I understand what you're saying.
And I'm wondering if maybe that left-hand portion of garage would be slid, and it would create a little demi courtyard for garaging, which might not be that bad. And if you had plenty of room to back up straight line, it doesn't affect your turning. I don't know, and that's why I'm asking you about the model. Did you have any kind of ideas about a model to help you three-dimensionally check it out?
We didn't. I will say that, you know, we've been working on this for about 2 years, but we've had many different iterations about where the addition was going to be placed. Is it all going to be out in this area? And so it's gone round and round and round. We haven't, gotten to the point of having a model yet.
All right. Well, I mean, like these study models that are dirty, you know. Anyway, that was my big question.
Other questions for? Go ahead.
A question related to that same issue of the garage and its extension. The question is whether the garage is the third car space is driving the train here, or is it the guest bathroom that's bringing the third car space below it? Which is the driver, the bathroom or the garage?
The garage drove the addition.
The garage.
Correct, right.
So,
The garage drove the addition, and the guest bathroom.
The bathroom is taking advantage of the volume that came with the garage, but is it seen as a top of the list need, or is the garage? Just the garage. Thank you.
Other questions? I'll ask if there's any public testimony on this issue. Come on up, thanks. Please introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi, Don Zerdani. I live two houses to the south on the other side of the ravine. I support this project. I mean, the house on the second floor is very tight. I mean, I understand what they're doing here, but they're not destroying the integrity of the design. It's the ravine is very stable. going on, building on the opposite side of the ravine. A house is currently under construction. And I support this project 100%. I think it's well overdue. The cars back in when Jim was riding his motorcycle legally through town, it was okay. And you could probably put a few motorcycles, but trying to park a Suburban with a family of 3 children, it's very difficult, even in smaller cars these days because of the openings. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other public testimony on this one? All right, now is the opportunity for us to deliberate, if we haven't done so already. Any deliberations? I guess I have a couple comments. I didn't know you grew up in this house. So
Well, no, I
you can have
didn't
the
grow up
last
in it. I just got in trouble in it. I had a good friend that lived there. I think Marshall Field's son lived here before my friend actually lived there. So,
Yeah.
you know, it's beautiful. I mean, I think the guy's point, it's a gem. And, you know, when I was there, I was trying to rationalize what the massing would look like. I mean, the front of the house and the great room is beautiful behind the turret, and it's large. And I don't know that these 2 wings are gonna, extending them is gonna overwhelm that, but I'm very sympathetic to what Guy said about, oh, that's a model, and that looks great, and I get it 3-dimensionally, and it fits, you know, and I get it. You know, to your point, the architect wouldn't say, oh, that's too much, let's shave it down, or let's try a different configuration. So, I mean, I'm sympathetic to the petition, certainly for the functional use of the garage. I think that's legitimate, as, you know, of course. And then, you know, again, I thought the bedroom upstairs was huge too, you know. But I really like the, you know, the porch design and the extension of that, and it's beautiful, kind of facing the ravine. So I'm sympathetic to it. I think if there was a model and I could get my hands around it, I'd be really supportive of it. But there's still a little question as to how, is it too big? And I couldn't get that going there, you know, in seeing this.
Got something for us?
Yeah, when I visited the property, I was struck by the amount of wall that's on the face of the living room as you approach it, and unrelieved. And as not a criticism of the design so much, but it is a kind of a compliment to your proposal to have the open porch, which brings a transparency and contrast with the solidity of that wall that is there. And the wall does, however, make the windows that do appear, the few windows in the dormer, very special. They're special because there was so much wall before you got to them. And I think that's the same point you were making on the other side. So there's some complementary relationships with what is there and what is being proposed. Also, it's my observation that the 2 additions are better than the result would be if only either one was being done by itself. The fact that they were being brought out together, I think, is helpful to preserve the character of the house that's there. I'm supportive of the petition.
Yeah, I think I'm supportive of the petition too. I did have the same concerns about the mass of brick, also how you're going to match the brick. I know sometimes you can find vintage brick though, that, you know, sometimes you can whether salvage one or whoever has it, but that might be worth exploring because, you know, just to get that weathered look too that you might want. You know, new brick versus old brick might not have that same effect. But, you know, it just makes me think, I know you have a landscape plan that does kind of hide some of that massive brick wall. I don't know, maybe explore the use of fenestration to break it up a little bit. Or maybe something, you know, the porch detail is so nice on that side. And it kind of will break up that original massive brick, kind of give it a nice detail in the end. I don't know if there's something you can do on the other side. I don't know, worth exploring with a porch detail or something. I don't know, but I don't think you have much option here. I think this is probably the best you can do, given the constrictions to get up there install in there. So, anyways, I'm rambling, but I'm in support of it.
Other deliberations?
Well, I had one more comment, thought, and the open nature of the porch is intriguing because it does kind of relieve that, and the stepping down, I think, is great. I was wondering a couple things. One was how you were going to be handling the base of those. These are going to be timber supports, as you've suggested them right now. And I don't think you're intending for that timber to come right down on the ground because it could start rotting pretty quickly, or are we going to have some kind of a base detail? Have you thought about that yet?
I haven't given a whole lot of thought exactly how we're gonna terminate them, but I don't wanna see a masonry base. I just don't feel that that's
Yeah, I know, that's.
appropriate.
Yeah, are you gonna just jam it right down on top of the, I mean, maybe that would look okay too. I just wondered if you'd given that much thought,
I would
because
like-
you don't wanna, that could be a make or break detail, how you do this porch column thing, and then you're proportioning, you're starting out with kinda nice bracketing suggestions. I think those look appropriate. But I was just wondering how that was gonna come down and resolve itself.
Yeah, I agree with you as far as the decay questions. I think traditionally this would look like a just wood column coming down onto perhaps a bluestone or some sort of stone paved, walkway. And that's kind of how I was envisioning terminating it, that the wood column would come down with stone. Wanted again to keep it simple. I don't want to over elaborate it. I understand the concerns with decay as I mentioned, but that was my thought. Keep it simple.
Yeah.
That's again where we're also getting away with using the pure foundations there. So that's why the columns are actually reduced. Again,
Well, you're gonna be putting down like little caissons, right? All right, so you can accommodate anything really. And I had one last thought I thought I would just throw out to you guys on the commission here, is that due to this really substantial masonry expression by the architect, I was wondering, since this porch is the first thing you really see now as you come down the driveway, do you think that maybe it might be a little bit too spindly, at least on its corners? And then would it be interesting, did you look at a brick pier there on each corner as sort of like a bracket for it, and then let the space between it be the contrast? Or
I did start to look at using brick even just to form the openings. A couple considerations there were it started to compete with the other masonry that was there. So I started to want to introduce a coin detail because all the corners of the house start to have coins when they're masonry. And then going along with, we're being inside a steep slope setback, we need to have a pure foundation. I'm trying to keep the weight down. So a lot of things went into getting away from masonry. Could I make the column bigger? Perhaps. Maybe it's a larger size column. Give
no,
it a
it's
little
just,
more mass.
it was, in fact, I should have made it one of my questions had you thought about that. It's just that I'd rather throw it out now than have it done and then be supposedly an issue later on. I like the elegant shapes of your additions. I mean, I think those are actually nice end brackets. And I'm still commenting, right, Kurt?
Yes, yeah.
So my only thought is I'm in support of all that you want to do. My only concern, and it's not too much with the porch, because I think because it's diaphanous on the first story, it's going to be all right, is that I'm just worried that we're maybe reaching out and changing the character of that catcher's mitt. And that's why I was thinking of the model, just to make sure before you cast off that that's not going to be a surprise. Because I think that would significantly alter the, I mean, if we're just going to make a house longer than an architect designed it, well, that's just life. But because of the nature of, he's got a 90-degree angle and he has another angle, you're making like a 20 to 30% increase in the enclosure, and maybe that's okay. But anyway, that's a comment, it's not a condition.
Other deliberations? You know, I have to say that there's some interesting things that just give me pause. I like it, it's a handsome addition. I don't think you're gonna affect anybody else's, well-being and that kind of thing, So I guess I would encourage you to look at a couple of things, and I'm tempted to let the architect resolve this, but you guys tell me after we talk about it. It'll be interesting. I agree with Guy, for some reason, after he said it, probably not before, but after he said it, there's something about the open porch that feels a little light. The roof is quite heavy. The rest of the composition is heavy, and those columns and maybe even the spacing of that, and even on the end elevation, somehow just feels like it's a little light. Maybe it's the column, maybe it's the resolution, how it comes down to the ground. If you go to the northeast elevation of that master bedroom.
One thing I will throw in here, though, is that we're looking at two-dimensional drawings.
Yeah.
And one thing that I've learned the hard way is that you tend to make things a little bit thicker two-dimensionally, but when they're square in plan, you see them in real life, and all of a sudden they just grew because you see, it's not like a round column, you see the diagonal.
Yeah.
So that's why I was even wondering about the model, because you'll even get a porch effect. You know what I'm talking about, Kurt?
Isn't it interesting how narrow that looks? You would never think that it was that narrow when you're standing out at the site. It doesn't feel
I know, it's
narrow.
one room wide.
It feels big.
Yeah.
Go take us over to the the garage, the back, what I call the back side of the garage, the entry side of the garage. Well, that's the garage door entry side. Let's do the, yeah, so I don't really have a, well, you know, Guy's idea of sliding the garage back, you know what he's talking about, so that it just increases, you know, leave the whole construction together, but let that garage fall back, recede from the entrance court a little bit. It might be worth studying. It's really a nuance, I think, from my point of view, although I see what you're talking about, the whole width of that kind of courtyard of the front building as you drive up to it. It's really hard to do this in 2 dimensions, I think.
It's extremely difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. But
to preclude even doing a model, you could simply take and construct an elevation, draw it up, lay your computer down so you actually can just fold it and put it on the table and look at what you're doing as opposed to folding the existing and show it to your client and then realize what you're getting yourself into 3-dimensionally.
So, I mean, I think those are important details to the way that the house looks when it's finally done. I'm on the fence as to whether or not to wait for those to be resolved. I'm kind of curious how everybody else feels about it. You know, this is obviously a thought-out presentation, and I think they'll take back this information and look at it, make sure that what they build they're happy with. I'm not sure I would prevent the petition based on any of those nuances, so I generally support it. What do you guys think?
I'm supportive. I think the additions amplify the house a bit, and it's in its existing character. And I frankly think when it gets done, it will look like they had always been there. I think, and they belong there. I think it'll be very good.
Thank you.
That's good. It's a good thing. Anybody else?
I just would like to encourage them to look at that model just to see what Guy's talking about, really. Because it might present something you didn't notice before.
Okay, so I guess I'm hearing that everybody is more or less supporting the petition, but encouraging you to kind of look closely at the details. You get to live with them a long time, so if there's no other deliberation, I'll ask for a motion.
I'd move to approve the petition based on the findings in the staff report and subject to the conditions therein.
Second.
Motion's been made by Commissioner Ransom, seconded by Commissioner Swenson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that one passes unanimously, so congratulations. Good luck with that. Study. Devil's in the details. All right, we've got one more agenda item this evening. It is a request for Certificate of Appropriateness approving new signage and a conceptual landscape plan for the East Lake Forest train station. I would also call that just the Lake Forest train station. I think we've seen some action on this before, and I know there's no ex parte conflicts, so we're good to go whenever you're ready.
Good evening. I'm Gunny Harbo Architects, and the architect for the restoration of the train station roof we've presented here before. I'm just going to quickly go through some historic images so I want to remind yourselves of that and give you a few pictures of the progress that we're going through, and then talk about the signage issue specifically. If I can get this thing to work. So these are just historic images, again, to give you a context and memory of what we've been talking about with the hip roofs. Those have been foreshortened, and we're putting the hips back on the ends of the sheds. Another historic image. There's a historic image of how it looked from the east side, and the east elevation, and how it looked just prior to the work commencing. And these, the dormers, of course, are being added. That's a big change. This is the shingle roof and how deteriorated it was. These are some of the changes that had occurred during the last renovation, where they added that peak on the west facade there, the warming house, and the foreshortened the gable ends, if you will, on the waiting sheds. Some of the conditions of the wood, the deterioration that was going on. Can you hear me okay? voice isn't enough. Anyway, this is just some of the wood deterioration, and this is taken over the last week or so, the progress that they're doing. You can see that they have begun to do the hips on at the warming house. Here's the sheathing going on. Some of the correction to some of the sagging that has occurred over time to the eave ends. One of the things that we did is we removed the roof that was over where the bank is on the northeast side, and it has opened up back this window that was there. And you could see it had been compromised, had been sort of cut up. That'll be restored. On the inside, it's a little dark, but on the inside, the interior was there. There was no drop ceiling. We don't know why they did what they did. Maybe there'd been a drop ceiling previously, but it isn't there now. So that'll be restored with open windows through there again. This is looking from the north end, and the slate going on. Again, the warming house from the west side, and the upper left corner is another one of the hip roofs. The new rafter tails that have been added at the hips, matching exactly the profiles of the original. These are the 4 dormers waiting to go on the roof, and actually 2 now were erected today on the east facade. I don't have a picture of that because it just happened. I do have it on my camera, but not in the slideshow. So that's the progress to date, and we're quite pleased at how it's going. I hope you've all had a chance to walk by and see it. I'm really here to talk specifically about the signage that needs to be added in order to announce the City of Lake Forest. And you can see from these photographs, the one on the left, you can see the dark background with the white lettering. And the one on the right, although you can't read the sign, that is the sign, and that one's important for us for determining the size of the sign. And here's a detail of the signage showing the white lettering on the dark background, which we're assuming is black. And there is a molding of some kind that runs here at the edge. Unfortunately, these photographs, this is as good as we got. That's all the information that we really have. So the design, this is in a reverse of it's white letters on a black background, but just to show the basic proportions of the lettering and the signage, you can see that the sign itself is 1 foot 3.5. This is all based off that one photograph, or those 2 photographs, sort of judging on the sizes of things. And the sign is 12 feet long. It's a very large sign. This is some of the detailing of how it's attached. And we are proposing that the sign be made out of metal. We don't know what it was. It's gone now. We know that a metal sign will last a lot longer. It is a significant investment that's being made. And once it's painted, it doesn't really matter what the substrate is that you're painting. It's a painted surface that you're seeing. And it may very well have been a metal sign. We just don't know what it was. So that's another detail with the weep hole and so on in it. So that's the sign. Did you want? They're going to go on to the landscape plan.
Oh yeah, sure. Why don't go ahead and do the landscape plan right away, and we'll do the questions all at once. Is that okay?
That's good.
Yeah, let's just get the presentation, and we'll just follow the whole dumb procedure.
Walk through this.
Ask Peter Gordon, City Forester, to come on up.
Good evening, Commissioner, members. This evening I'm here today to give you an idea of a conceptual plan before you for the East Train Station renovation project. As some of the previous pictures showed, you may recall that there was 2 honey locust trees on the north and the south side of the warming house. As a result of the renovation and the change in the roof, it was unfortunate that those trees had to be removed, not only in the short term of the project, but also for the long-term viability of the project. And the south side, it came within the hip roof. On the north side, It was several inches away, but unfortunately would have ended up growing into that roof probably in the next 10 to 15 years. So what we did on a staff level is we came in, we designed a plan to hopefully address that framing of that building by the use of 2 significant shade trees both on the north and the south side. Also some underplantings to hopefully highlight the Market Square renovations that took place in 2000 and more recently the renovations that took place to Western Avenue. There is existing landscape that's in the front of the building that will stay. That was based on the Western Avenue project that took place last year and the year prior. The new renovations that we're proposing will go ahead and not only frame the building but be more symmetrical. You may notice that on the north side of the building currently is a very large concrete patch. On the south side is a small area where we have an event box and not a lot of room for pedestrian traffic, and it's kind of funneled by the current design. What we were charged with doing is trying to come up with an idea that would be not only functional but also highlight the warming house and the new renovation. As a result, we were able to take 1 parking stall on the south side at the direction of the city manager and other staff members to balance not only the north but the south side and to add more significant landscape that we think will enhance the building. We have not chosen any plants, be it that this is all conceptual right now, so certainly we encourage you to give us any feedback that you may have, any thoughts, any ideas. We were able to run this by the Civic Beautification Committee and certain members of the Lake Forest Garden Club on a recent bus tour through the city community, highlighting kind of the work that's taking place in the proposed renovations that we're proposing for the landscaping. So with that, I certainly would be happy to answer any questions. Again, it's only conceptual. We really found this a great opportunity to go ahead and enhance what the design of the buildings was accomplishing.
All right, thank you. And Kathy, maybe you could, I don't know if there's a staff report, but let's just ask the question. I think we're being asked this evening to rule on signage, and landscaping will come back later, but we're asked to give our input now. Any other comments from staff? Go ahead.
Just that I was going to clarify that we felt it was important to bring back the conceptual landscape plan for the west side of the warming house so that you could say, I told you so.
Would never do that.
You were correct in your earlier comments that you felt that the trees needed to be removed. There actually was a little bit of space on the south side, but it would have been very, very, very tight. So after much discussion and deliberation, we were able to get approval to do a plan that really will help to enhance that area. But we don't want you to take action on this tonight. There are other elements that we're working on with respect to the train station, but just wanted to let you know we hadn't just cut down those trees and we're walking away from it. So this will come back to you with a much larger scope, may incorporate a future bike shelter. We are looking right now at the possibility of removing the drive-through canopy that was added on the east side of the building, which could really help to open up the building now that the dormers are being added and that smaller roof has been removed. None of that is for sure yet, so this will be back in front of you. So for your information only, if you have comments, great, but you will have another chance to look at that. We would like your approval on the signage tonight. As Mr. Harbaugh said, we don't know exactly what the signage was, but we're working to replicate it as closely as possible from an appearance standpoint, and we will continue to work closely as that signage evolves, and would also welcome the input of the Preservation Foundation since they've been really instrumental in moving this project forward.
Great. I do have a couple of quick questions for you on the landscape. Can you point out what area of that is existing that would not remain? Are you just proposing changes to the two ends, or is the whole area along the street being changed?
The existing currently is right here in front of the warming house. That's there as a result of the Western Avenue project. You will see a bump out in the curb line.
Okay.
That is actually an addition, and if you can see the same plan in the packet, you'll see the existing curb line, so you will go ahead and be able to see where the existing curb line was.
So the changes are just on the north and the south end?
Correct.
And only the south end changes the curb line?
Actually, both curb
Both
lines
curb lines.
change.
Okay.
The south end actually goes further to the south, whereas the north one stays in its exact spot on the north line.
Got it. All right, other questions, one way or another, for either signage or landscaping, please?
Well, this may be obvious, but are the trees that you're proposing going to impact the ability to see the signs that you're proposing?
Actually, they shouldn't. This gives us the opportunity now to bring these trees a little bit closer to Western Avenue or a little bit closer to the west. So it should open up that signage. You know, again, our goal is to then frame that building with the use of large shade trees.
In addition to that, the signs will actually be only on the east building, or the east canopies, not on all four.
Okay.
It's just for the other two, so.
Okay.
So the trees on the east side will prevent that.
Yeah.
So there's only two signs, and they're both on the east
Yes,
building.
that's historically how it was. There was no signs on the warming house.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, can you bring the sign up again, the one with the font?
Oh, the drawing?
No, the real one, the old historical picture.
Oh, is he going to steal it from me?
Yeah, he is.
What?
Quick, Mary.
That the
jump on
font,
it.
the
Well, yeah,
font is
I mean,
different?
I was just noticing that the letters.
The letters are different.
Yeah, so I don't know.
Let the record show that Mary Ellen
The
pointed
intent
this
of
out to
the
me.
intent of the drawing is not to say what the font is, that's just to show the basic
Oh, okay.
size and character of the letter.
Okay.
The intent is to work with the sign fabricator
Good job,
to
Jim.
match this font
Okay.
as closely as they can.
Yeah, because it's kind of quirky, right?
Yeah,
It's-
and the E, the horizontal
Yeah.
bar in the E is shorter on the
Well, it's
the
all of
photo
them. It's
as
all
on
of them.
the.
The
Okay.
font that's here
Yeah, and the F
is not necessarily one that you have in AutoCAD. So
Okay.
the
Okay.
drawing is just
Yeah.
really to indicate the idea of the block lettering, and that this will be what we work with the sign maker to recreate the painted sign.
Yeah, 'cause it's
And
kinda
it is just,
quirky.
the only relief on the sign is the molding, otherwise it's a flat
Yeah.
piece of material that then gets the lettering on it.
Do you know if Metro has any kind of requirements for signage? Does Metro have any requirements for city signage? I mean, you know, the trains are coming from the other way. Do they require that it's on that side too?
Metro has provided their own signage. It's underneath the canopy as well as away from the platforms that actually direct whether it's Waukegan or Chicago, the way that they
Oh, and
the
that's all they
trains direct.
want.
So,
Oh, okay.
and they meet all the ADA requirements. This is more just keeping in, from the historical standpoint, we just want to put back what was original.
Okay.
Any
You know, I
other-
have a question about the landscape plan too, Peter. Actually, kind of an idea.
Okay.
Well, not an idea, just an observation. You know, when I was looking at the train station from where that little island is in front of the fountain, so you're
Okay.
west, that's west of the train station. You know, I noticed that the sight lines from there, if you look behind you, you see the fountain, you see the flagpole, you see Marshall Fields. If you look in front of you, you see that doorway to that warming house. But yet in front of that doorway is this hedge and a railing. And I thought, you know, I know why that railing was put up there, because the road used to be right next to there, right? So it was a safety issue. When you came out that door, you didn't want people walking right into the road. But now we have this extra hedge and the extra concrete. I'm just wondering, because that sight line is so strong, but yet it ends at that doorway to the warming house, and it's kind of like, it's just like nothing. You know, I'm wondering, is there some way where we can break up that hedge and make the sight line go, or the walkway go up to the front of the door or something?
Well, I think that's a very valid point. I think that, you know, based on a need, this is kind of the design that we formatted. Excuse me, that rail actually works with the ADA accessibility into
Right.
what's now the chamber. And so unless they're going to look at that ramp and another type of entrance into the building, I think that has to stay currently. But we would agree with you that coming out of that door, looking into Market Square, you actually see down that long corridor. It gives us a great opportunity. I think our only concern is that we don't want to encourage pedestrian traffic there so that they cross in the middle of the road. We do want them to use the crosswalk. So based on your comments on how we developed that design, I think that's an excellent point.
Because even that doorway on the west warming house lines up with the doorway on the east side. So, you know, you really have this great corridor of sight lines. So just a thought, you know, because
Right.
if you leave on the side, you'll have the ramps on both sides for the ADA. I don't know, just something that I really noticed that's so strong, but yet we end it with that railing.
Yeah,
in
and
there.
this, I think, was an opportunity for us to go ahead and try to design something. You know, your comments certainly are valid comments. I think that when we were talking about this plan from 30,000 feet, we also kind of saw exactly what you saw. But at the moment, it just didn't follow the need. But I think we can certainly look at that because I think we're probably going to have upwards of another 6 to 9 months before we actually plant that to develop this plan.
Okay. Okay.
So any other questions?
Oh, just what kind of trees were you thinking about? Do you have any kind of suggestions for the shade trees on the end there?
Well, we're looking for something that's going to, as everyone wants, rapid growth, perhaps good fall color. We're actually looking at going to some of the hybrid elms. We did talk about honey locusts, not only to match what's currently on Western Avenue, but when it came down to it, we wanted 2 quality shade trees that matched, and we wanted to go ahead and get a significant size that it really made an impact right away. And so we were looking in the 5 to 6 inch category. When you go that large, certainly the availability of 2 trees that match is not as easily found. So we were going to kind of head down the elm route, maybe look at silver linden, maybe look at a couple other tree species, but really came down to matching 2 trees that would certainly highlight the project.
You're not growing any in your nursery out there?
May not now. No, but we're trying.
Other questions?
You know, question may have been answered earlier, and I may have missed it, but regarding the lettering, the font character, etc. Is the intent to match or mimic, replicate the original lettering and its character and its quirkiness, or is it?
Our intent is to match the lettering as you see it right there.
Just as you see it, which I would support. I think that's a great idea, because nobody does lettering like that today.
Right.
And it will let everybody know this is historic.
And we'll be working with the sign painter, whoever that is, to make sure that they'll do a mock-up and all that sort of things.
Yeah.
Guy, any questions?
Yeah, Pete, I have a question now. I mean, I've been looking at the plan here, and I see you guys you've taken over a couple parking spaces to get this thing a little more breadth around the warming house. Canopy, actually, it's not, the warming house is the solid in this drawing, but the dash line represents the roof line that we'll have out there, right? Do you think that these flanking trees are going to be crowding the edge of that a little bit? I mean, if you look at the dotted line, it goes kind of right into a third of the canopy, and I'm just wondering, is that a little bit too congestion? I mean, should we take another parking space on each side?
Well, I think that would be pushing it. But we
Well,
were
no, I
able
mean,
to, we
we're
were able to
spending a lot of
grab, we were
money on
able to
this,
grab
and-
one parking spot on the south side, and actually it's a parking spot and a quarter, maybe an eighth. It's a funny triangular spot, and if you get a chance, I certainly encourage you to look at it. I don't know if we're talking about the same dotted line, but there is a dotted line that represents the existing
Canopy.
curb that cuts through there, and so.
I'm talking about the
I'm
building
not
canopy,
sure.
the roof canopy. Your tree goes right into the roof canopy,
Well,
right?
that, what you're seeing is probably the tree as it matures, and that the thought is to get that canopy over the roof. And so we've actually gained a pretty significant amount compared to where the trees currently exist. And because of the size of the bed, it gives us an opportunity again to kind of move it forward closer to Western Avenue. You know, we've got some infrastructure issues we have to deal through. One of them is an event box on the south side, so the placement of that tree will have a lot to do with how that event box works. And in addition, we have a sewer there which we're going to have to relocate, which there's some pipes that are at a significant depth that we can't actually alter in the pit there as well. So to answer your question, I guess we feel that the tree will fit based on our current measurements.
Well, you know what might be helpful, Pete, since everybody's doing such a good job on this? You've got a plan view that's got me worried you don't have enough room from the trunk to the canopy, okay? I mean, I think that's legitimate for me to bring up because it's a suggestion. And in your perspective, you can't really get the feel for that because it's from the end. So the perspective brings up a couple other issues. Maybe you ought to do an elevation and have Mr. Harbaugh give you an elevation to work on and draw the tree up on it two-dimensionally, and then just see if you're really comfortable. It might be it's a little crowded. That's my suggestion. And another thought that I had is, Are these two smaller trees in front of the warming house, those aren't existing? We're going to be putting those in?
Those are existing. Actually, those
existing?
are Kentucky coffee trees that were planted as a result of the Western Avenue planting. And I think there was an element of that roof that's now since been removed, and that was to frame that element, which is gone. And so they don't have the same significance that they once did. And so getting back to the comment about looking at creating kind of a more open courtyard, I think that if we did go that route, that those trees and that planting would be removed, maybe even.
You don't have
bumped out to the
a
street.
shot in one of those existing photos of that elevation, do you? Of the west elevation of the warming house? I don't know if there were, I can't remember if there
Actually, the existing historic photo shows a different warming house configuration.
yeah.
But this one is.
That's how it will be. The
Yeah.
picture on the right, that's.
Yeah, it doesn't show the trees there, does it? The coffee
No,
trees?
the previous picture I think does. But
Oh, they are there? It's hard to see.
Yeah, the coffee trees are there, but if you look at the south line, you could see that parking spot that was
Oh,
there.
there you
So, see how that curb bumps out?
Yeah, yeah.
Right there?
That's the picture we needed, yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
That is, I apologize, that is actually pre-Western Avenue
Yeah, that's an old,
renovation.
that's pre-coffee tree too, right?
Yeah.
Sorry?
That's before the coffee tree.
That is before the coffee tree.
Yeah,
I think shows you where the honey locusts are currently, where the hip roofs kind of come out on that south side, so you can certainly see the relation there. Although the south line has changed, you can see that funny awkwardness of that parking spot right there.
Yeah.
And so that's where we're kind of bumping it out, although that has changed with the reconstruction of Western Avenue.
You can talk about this curve that you moved, this one had to, and it's actually balanced out.
That's the end here.
Yeah, that's the south end of the warming house.
And so, again, kind of getting back to give you a point of reference to your comments about where the tree falls. The curve to the north hasn't moved, so you can see all of that planting space that we have available to us. So we can certainly look at doing a perspective from that point. We can actually take it to the level of measuring that out and kind of showing you
Yeah, yeah.
either by
I just
marking
want,
the ground or whatnot, where that tree fits. So, you know, I think that's a really good question. That's a question that we have. We are concerned about the infrastructure on the south side, but I think when it's said and done, we'll be able to make it work.
yeah, I just didn't hear it, so I thought I'd throw it out there so you'd have it, but you're obviously on it, so good.
Other
Great.
questions for the staff?
You know,
or
I just
the
wanted to also
petitioner?
commend you on like breaking up that concrete, because I think with this last go-around of renovations, it was way too much concrete all over Western Avenue. So it's nice to see you break it up with some landscaping.
And this was a great opportunity for us, so thank you.
Other questions? This is an opportunity for any comment from the public. Anybody have any comment for us on this one? I see none. It's an opportunity for deliberations, and I will just throw in my 2 cents on the species. I applaud the big canopy idea, the hybrid elm. Love to see big canopy up there as opposed to another spindly honey locust. I hate those trees. I'm just kidding.
Please
The elm
stop.
would be good, though.
Don't hold back.
Yeah, sorry.
Tell us what you really feel.
Well, I look forward to seeing the final landscape presentation, and I don't have any issue with the sign. Anybody else have any deliberation? I'll field a motion if someone would dare.
I move that we approve the signage as presented tonight.
Motion's been made by Commissioner Atchison. Did I do that right? Seconded by Commissioner Swenson. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And any opposed? And that one passes unanimously. Thank you very much for your patience with us tonight. Now is an opportunity for the public to address the Historic Preservation Commission on any non-agenda items. Do I have any non-agenda items? Thank you for that. And I would ask if there's any additional information. We don't have a meeting next month, or do we?
You do not have a meeting next month, so
Thank
in
you.
exchange for your hard work and extra meetings over the fall, we're giving you December off. So happy holidays, and we will see you at the end of January.
Terrific.
We may be in touch if some of the plans come in that required review by subcommittee. We may be in touch with a few of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So
The
moved.
motion's been moved by Commissioner Berg, seconded by Commissioner Preschlack. All in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you and good night.